Hello and welcome everyone to the transformative world of CCARE Stanford University and its very special Applied Compassion Training Program. Thank you for joining us as we're gathering today. As you can see flowing into chat, we are spanning countless time zones around the world as we're getting together to embark on a journey of profound significance at this particularly pivotal time in our world, which desperately needs more people to step up and step in and act with compassion. My name is Monica Hanson, and I'm one of the 3 co-founders and directors of the Applied Compassion Training Program, and I am touched and moved to have all of you joining us here today. You know, at CCARE Stanford, one thing that we know to be true is that there is a spark of compassion within each one of us. And this spark has the potential to grow and flourish when it's nurtured in the right environment, with the right community, and with the right skills and training and practices. And one of the fascinating findings from the science of compassion shows us that each of our sparks of compassion, when we hear about acts of compassion or when we witness it, it readies our own brains and bodies to act with compassion too. It's a profound ripple effect of compassionate action, and it's called elevation. So during this interactive and live online event, you will have the incredible opportunity to learn about acting from compassion and with compassion and experiencing elevation. First, you're going to hear from Dr. James Doty, the visionary founder of CCARE Stanford. And then you'll get to hear from my beloved and dear co-founder, Neelama Eyres. And then finally, you'll hear from an influential expert that will set us up to go into the breakout rooms. She's part of our leadership team at ACT, and it's Kristine Claghorn. You know, and when you're in those breakout rooms, you're going to be meeting a group of alumni from ACT and its soon-to-be graduates, and through their stories, through their experiences of applying compassion in the world, you'll start to experience and learn and understand how compassion is both making a profound impact today and also elevating the world today. I also wanted to let you know that Neelama and I have a beloved 3rd co-founder, Robert Cusick, and while we're acting with compassion here today, he's out in the world also acting with compassion too, and just wasn't able to join us today. So through this immersive experience we're offering, I invite you to notice how you feel called to act with compassion in your own life. So now I get to turn and introduce Dr. James Doty. Some of you, many of you, I'm sure most of you already know of him. And on behalf of the ACT founders, all of us, I'd like to say how deeply grateful we are for Dr. Doty living a life that embodies compassion and action. Dr. Doty is a visionary. He's the founder and director of the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism, Research and Education, of which His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, is the founding benefactor. Dr. Doty is a professor at Stanford School of Medicine. He's the best-selling author of Into the Magic Shop, a neurosurgeon's quest to discover mysteries of the brain and the secrets of the heart, on the New York Times bestseller list. And he has a podcast that is growing exponentially with the same title on Apple, Into the Magic Shop. And you know, one thing that I'm sure many of you may know, but not actually experienced, that Dr. Doty, he's a generous human being. That part we know. And I also have a sense that it takes personal sacrifices that we're never going to know about for him, that's also true for him. You know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama lovingly shared about his beloved Dr. Doty this: from the moment when a simple act of kindness changed the course of his own life, to his founding of a center to study compassion at Stanford University, Jim Doty's life illustrates how each of us can make a difference. We can make the world a more compassionate place. Dr. Doty brings his heart to every problem, and through his heart creates change. It's undeniably true. Dr. Doty is a world leader in compassion, and he literally travels the globe almost weekly, transforming the lives of thousands. And what also is true is that he is a sensitive, kind, and gentle human being who profoundly touches the lives of countless people on deeply personal levels too. So Dr. D, it's with gratitude and respect and unconditional love from all the founders of ACT that we welcome you here today and invite you to speak about ACT at CCARE Stanford. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you for your generous introduction. Most of it was true. Of course, those accolades are very much appreciated. But, you know, the reality is, like each of you, I'm a human being. And there's not a single one of us who every second is our most ideal self. And in fact, our point isn't to change you into some superhuman. It's not possible. All of us represent the frailty and the fragility of just our own humanity. That being said, I don't think there's a single one of us who doesn't recognize that each of us can improve ourselves, but more importantly, it is within our power to improve the lives of others around us. So often people say, well, I don't have the position, I don't have wealth. But the fact of the matter is, neither of those are critical. What's absolutely critical is what's in your heart. And so often people will grow up in challenging circumstances. And in those situations, you have two paths to go down. One path is to have anger and hostility that you carry with you, and you believe a narrative that you did it all yourself and nobody helped you. And I would submit to you that that is a false narrative. And unfortunately, those people continue to carry this sense that they did everything and no one helped them. But there's not a single human being alive who has not been helped by others. And in my own case, not only was there a individual who changed my life, but throughout my life, there have been individuals who've reached out and allowed me to become who I am. And I think that's what we're talking about here today. Well, we've worked for many years at CCARE, not only to do fundamental research and to develop and promote techniques for compassion, self-compassion, but we've also created a community, and it is an international community. And this is something of which I have great pride in. We have created the ACT program. And I say we, but in fact, it was Robert and Neelama and Monica who really put the work and their own heart into making this program what it is. And what this program does is it allows us actually to see ourselves. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes we're hypercritical, we're negative, but when you take this course, it makes you understand your own challenges and allows you to accept yourself as you are and recognize that in the face of that, you deserve love and are worthy of love. And when you're able to look at yourself and give love to yourself, it also changes how you see the world, because so often people are hypercritical. But when they develop compassion for themselves, they understand that everyone is suffering. And that allows us then to change the narrative, because action is what's required here. You know, so many of us have empathy for the other. And empathy, of course, can be a recognition of one's suffering, but you can also have empathic joy. But what's the most important here is compassion. And that is not only the empathy of somebody towards somebody who's suffering, but it has this action component. That's what compassion is, this motivational desire to alleviate suffering. And over the last 4 years or I should say the 4 programs we've done, we've trained over 500 people, over 40 countries, who've taken this message of compassion. And whether they're from the corporate environment, the healthcare environment, individuals who are interested in helping others simply for that reason, or those in the mind-body wellness space, they have taken what they have learned, the program that they have been mentored on, the Capstone Project, to take that out to the world. And whether this is in hospitals, schools, organizations, courtroom, businesses, or just in their community, those individuals who become ambassadors of compassion have influenced over 1 million people so far. And that's extraordinary. But it shows you, one, in this world right now, there is so much suffering. And I don't have to revisit with you what's been going on the last few weeks, but it's beyond that. We still have problems in Yemen. We have problems in South Sudan. We have problems still all over the world where people are suffering, sadly inflicted by other human beings. But that should not take us away from an optimistic view of the world, a recognition that most people deep in their hearts want to help, they want to be of service, they want to make a difference. And that is what we offer each and every one of you who accepts the opportunity to participate in this program, to graduate, and then become an ambassador of compassion and have an influence on those around you. You know, so often Gandhi has been quoted when he says, within you, be the change you want to make in the world. And I think that is what's important. We have to first change ourselves. And then once we're able to do that, then we can really have an impact in the world, because then we can speak honestly, we can carry our truth and share that with people. And when you have an open heart, the truth sits right there and allows you to connect, because most people want is someone to listen, to someone to hold them, but most importantly, somebody to care. And I think that's what the ACT program is. It gives you a way in which you can demonstrate how much you care, and by doing so, change the lives of many people, but also inspire people on the same path that you're on, which is to be of service. And I don't believe that there is any higher calling than to walk the world and to be of service to your fellow man. So I appreciate your time with me today. I just, again, want to acknowledge how important the ACT program has been to the work we're doing at CCARE, how important the work of the 3 founders have had, and how I'm touched, I'm honored to be part of this program and to be able to share that enthusiasm and belief in each and every one of you to change the world. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Certainly, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And Neelama, over to you.
Dr. Doty, thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you so very much for, you can see people's reactions out there. Thank you so very much for sharing your heart, your wisdom, your humanity with us. As Monica said, it's such a gift to be with you and to feel part of your team of people doing this good work that CCARE has paved the way for in our world. So deep, deep, deep bows of appreciation to you. And welcome from me as well, everyone. I'm Neelama Eyres, also one of the co-founders and directors of the ACT program here at CCARE. And as Monica and Dr. Doty shared, we are delighted to have you with us today. And I'm really inspired as you were coming in from the waiting room and I was seeing your names and your countries you know, with everything going on in the world right now, it is deeply meaningful to see all of you gathered here because you care about compassion. It truly lifts me up in a challenging moment that we're all in globally. So thank you for your, whatever it is that brought you here, your own desire for compassion, or to learn more about how to apply compassion in the world. And that's what we're going to get to do in just a few minutes. You'll be going into breakout rooms and you'll get a chance to hear from some of these amazing ambassadors of compassion that will be on the 3 panels in our 3 different breakout rooms. But before you go off into those rooms, I just want to take just a few minutes and share with you a little bit of context so you can understand, when you're hearing from these people about their projects and the great work they're doing in the world, sort of the program that they went through and what they each had to do as ambassadors in the ACT program to get to the place you're hearing about today. So if you'll bear with me a moment, I'm just going to share my screen with you and just a few key points about our program here. Can I get a thumbs up, Kelly and Monica, if you can see that? Okay, perfect, great. Yeah, I know it's blank, but I'm glad you can see it. So what is ACT? As Dr. Jody just shared with you, this is one of the signature programs offered at CCARE Stanford right now. And essentially it's an 11-month certificate program. So all of the people you'll be listening to tonight on the panels have either completed, graduated from that program, or are just about to graduate with us in November. And one powerful way to think about ACT, and Dr. Doty just alluded to this a moment ago, is we think of this program in some ways as an incubator, a place where people can bring their ideas about compassion, their desires to make the world around them a better place, but translate those from ideas to action. Frankly, you know, thinking about compassion and dreaming about compassion is just no longer enough. And so this program was designed specifically to help people take their ideas about how to bring compassion into the world and turn those into projects that get developed and delivered within these 11 months that they're with us. These projects essentially, and you'll get to hear about them in a moment, they offer compassion solutions to real world problems. What does that mean? So you'll hear today, there are projects that have been developed to help healthcare workers deal with burnout in hospital settings. There have been projects developed to help people in classrooms, the youth and the students, deal with these unprecedented levels of anxiety and depression they're facing. There have been projects that have been developed in the corporate environment to help people on teams who need support managing conflict or better engagement at work. So you can really take compassion and make it part of a solution to virtually any problem in any environment. But you'll get to hear, you know, some really unique ways from the panelists in a moment about how they did that. And as I said, these projects get delivered really in settings like companies, hospitals, schools, and community settings around the globe. The training, the 11-month training, really gives the participants, and I'll share with you a little bit more in a moment how we do that, but we really aim to give the participants very curated personal support. Because as you can imagine, these projects are quite different and the settings that they're being offered in are quite different. So we try to help each person tailor a solution specific for their unique setting and the unique group of people they want to serve. So that's one way to think about ACT. ACT is an incubator. Another way to think about ACT, which is equally important, and Dr. Doty was just alluding to that as well, is that it's a very personal transformational journey. In order to really be this change, in order to really transmit compassion into settings, we need to develop ourselves and really to look at the blocks, frankly, that we have to our own ability to transmit compassion. So a big piece of the 11-month program is also each person's inner growth and transformation. So as you listen to these panelists today, I can say with confidence, each of them have been on a deeply personal transformational journey to get to the place that they're all at now in delivering their projects. ACT is a practice community, and we come together regularly to practice embodying compassion and cultivating deeper access to compassion, as well as moving from the theoretical knowledge about compassion, which is important and interesting. And of course, CCARE is on the forefront of some of that knowledge and science. But ACT helps people take that theoretical knowledge and move it from knowing to actually being or applying that compassion for self, for others, for community, and for the world. Some of the program components which make the 11 months with us sort of unique is that we are a global community, kind of like how you see right here in this Zoom session is sort of the representation of ACT. We have people joining from countries all around the world. I'll show you our map in a minute. And we come together for 3 immersive retreats online throughout the 11 months together. We come together also as a community once a month to receive the teaching and the science of compassion, as well as I shared a moment ago, we come together monthly to practice compassion together. Each participant in the program is part of a smaller mentoring group of about 30 people, and even a smaller team. We call these capstone teams. They're teams of about 6 ACT participants that are really intimately involved with helping each other in the development of these capstone projects across the 11 months together. Every ACT participant gets to meet with an ACT faculty mentor and meet with us regularly to help design and deliver and really deal with obstacles that can kind of come up along the way. As you can imagine, if you want to offer something into the world, even if it's in a community or in a peer setting or in a workplace setting, we can stumble into those things that stop us from sharing ourselves in the world. And so part of the mentoring that people receive in ACT is looking at the challenges and the obstacles that block them from being an ambassador of compassion and really working with those. And of course, the whole program culminates in this applied compassion project. The curriculum, just to give it to you at a brief glance here, you'll see is a combination, again, of personal growth and inner transformation, along with the well-studied principles of compassion, and even the science of compassion that CCARE Stanford is on the forefront of understanding and delivering, as well as some rich curriculum around how to bring this kind of approach into a bigger system, whatever that system is that you're part of. So it's a really holistic and pretty broad and deep curriculum that these panelists you're going to see today and all of our ACT participants get exposed to over these 11 months. And as I shared with you, ACT is a global community. And as Dr. Doty mentioned, we've had close to 500 ambassadors complete the program at this point from all around the world. And you can look at our little map. We're all very proud of our map here at CCARE because it really shows these red dots are ACT ambassadors and where they're delivering their project in the world. So I know for me personally, when I get depressed about the state of affairs going on globally, I bring myself back to this map. It's on our website if you ever are having your own moment where you need a little extra hope. And there's something about looking at this that just gives me hope in humanity, to know that these people who you're going to meet in just a moment are out in the world at places of work, at community settings, at hospitals, at schools, delivering the teachings and the practices of compassion. So that is something that's been helpful for all of us here to be part of this vibrant global community. And then last but not least, you might be wondering, what do people do with this certificate? What do they do after this program? You'll get to hear from some of the panelists in the breakout rooms in just a moment what they're doing. But in general, having that certificate from CCARE Stanford opens pretty incredible doors for our participants, and they'll share that with you. But giving them, equipping them with the credibility of the Stanford name, along with those evidence-based resources and this 11 months of experience, people do all sorts of things. Some of the things people do are, like I shared earlier, designing compassion-based solutions for organizations or communities that they're a part of. People facilitate meetings or team building discussions. Many of our participants design trainings and workshops themselves and deliver those to advance the practice and development of compassion. Some of our graduates offer talks or presentations. We've had many graduates that have been asked to deliver speeches at conferences and other events where there's a need or desire to raise awareness about compassion. And some of our graduates are promoting compassion within their already existing place of work or community. So those are the kinds of things that people can do with certificates. In addition, many of our graduates have written articles and books and have been interviewed on podcasts. And these doors start to swing open as our graduates and our participants put themselves out into the world. What we've noticed here at CCARE Stanford is the world responds, because frankly, the world is hungry for compassion. And one of the things we hear most commonly reported by our mentees are, I delivered my project and the feedback I got was, we want more. So that is why we're on a mission here at ACT to train even more people, to spread this ripple effect out into the world. And to that end, our 2024 program is open for registration. If you happen to know anyone in your own life, or even if you are inspired to become an ambassador of compassion, you can find out more about ACT and check out our website. So thank you so much for letting me share all that with you. I hope that provides some context for when you're listening to these panelists share their stories of their projects in breakout rooms in just a moment. And with that, I'm going to pass you over to my dear colleague, Kristine Claghorn, who's going to set you up for what's coming next. Kristine.
Thank you so much, Neelama. I'm so happy to be here with everyone. Hello, hello. So nice to see people from around the world. And this is a really exciting part. So get excited, because now you'll have the chance to listen to ACT ambassadors share about their ACT transformative experience and their impactful capstone projects in these curated breakout rooms. Each room has a mix of areas of interest in industries like healthcare, education, business, leadership, social issues, parenting, caregiving, wellness, and more. In every room, you'll get to see a cross-section of our amazing ACT ambassadors, both current participants and alumni, and the ways in which they've amplified compassion in their fields, their communities, and in their areas of the world. The panels will be open for about 60 minutes. So we'll have some questions and answers, and we'll leave some time at the end for the audience to ask some questions of our panelists as well.
Well, welcome all of you who are joining breakout room number 1. We have an incredible panel here, and I am so excited that we're going to get to delve a little more deeply into this topic of how compassion is being applied across some pretty significant settings in the world through these 4 remarkable panelists that are joining me today. Each of these panelists is an ambassador of compassion in their own right, and you'll get to hear from them in just a moment. As I said in the main session, most of the panelists, or half of the panelists today have graduated, and the other half are about to graduate in just a few weeks from the Applied Compassion Training. I'd like to get us started just by introducing each of the panelists one at a time. And as I do that, I'll give them each a moment to share a little bit about their capstone project with you, so you can have a tangible sense of what are these projects. And what we'll do is we'll get to hear from each of them kind of on the same question. The question I'm going to pose to each of you panelists as the first question is, how did your specific capstone project bring compassion into a real world setting? How did your project bring compassion into a real world setting? And also, how did your project apply compassion to a specific problem or challenge that the participants you served through your project were dealing with? So what was the real world setting? How did you bring compassion into it? And what was the problem or challenge you were trying to solve with compassion? And I'm going to start us off with our first panelist that I'd like to introduce. It's Jeff Jacobs. Jeff, give a little wave here so everyone can see you. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff was part of our ACT 2021 cohort, so we're going back a couple of years. And Jeff is the Senior Director of Organizational Effectiveness at Adobe. And this means Jeff serves as an executive coach and an internal consultant to senior leadership teams across Adobe, addressing topics such as team effectiveness, change management, leadership development. And in addition to the incredible work Jeff does at Adobe, Jeff is also on 2 nonprofit boards and participates in retreat, music, and prison ministry. Jeff, it is an honor to have you here. I'm tossing the baton over to you.
It's great to be here with you, Neelama, and it's wonderful to see many familiar faces, both from the ACT program, friends around the world. So it's great to be with everybody this evening. So you want us to jump in and talk immediately about our capstone. So my capstone, being a trainer facilitator, I knew that I wanted my capstone to be a workshop of some type. And I thought that the best thing to do would be, because in 2021, we were in the midst of COVID, we were dealing with a lot of issues around burnout. So I decided to put together a workshop, Compassion 101 workshop, to try to really focus on the issues of burnout and to provide a very brief overview to what compassion was all about. Now, I made it 60 minutes because in a corporate setting, if I made it 61 minutes, people wouldn't show up. And 60 is about the best, we can offer. Even that is pushing it a little bit for some of our audience. And my goal was to get it in front of 100 people. I wanted it to be interactive, and I tried to keep things as clear as possible. And I also, many people have found that they want to avoid words like compassion and mindfulness and suffering, especially in a corporate setting. But because this was a capstone and because it was a pilot, I intentionally wanted to use those words to see what would happen. So while my goal was to get this in front of 100 people, I was very pleasantly surprised to see the appetite. And over about a 5-month period of time, I facilitated this for about 35 times for 1,100 people. Now, 800 of these folks were at Adobe, 300 were nonprofits, friends, intact teams at other corporations, churches, ministry groups, all over. And it was really fascinating. And to get to your question about the impact that it had, the feedback that we had is that people, first off, commented on the fact that it brought them a feeling of affecting their feeling of isolation. That a lot of people felt that the burnout was unique to them, and they felt as though, I'm not alone in this experience. experience. It also introduced the concept that was very profound to me of self-compassion, because one of the things that I found so interesting is that compassion, being of service to others, comes much more naturally to us than applying those same principles to ourselves. And the sense of burnout that we were experiencing during COVID was, in many cases, because people weren't focusing on themselves. So over the course of those 5 months, being a corporate setting and wanting to demonstrate the value, I kept a lot of metrics. And one of the most profound metrics I found is that 98% of my participants indicated they'd recommend the experience to someone else. So we had a lot of positive interaction. In all that time, I had one skeptical conversation, I would say. That doesn't mean that others weren't skeptical. They probably opted out, but I had one person who got a little, overtly defensive. Most folks just couldn't get enough of the topic, and I was invited to speak to our interns and speak to events for our diversity, equity, and inclusion organization. So very, very exciting experience.
Jeff, thank you so much. I just love, what happened in your project, that you set this goal for yourself. Oh, maybe 100 people will be interested, and the hunger was so much bigger than that, right? And clearly you tapped into the suffering that you were trying to address, remembering for all of us that compassion, distinct from empathy, compassion is a specific response to suffering in the environment. Suffering sounds like a big word, but in this environment, it was the burnout and the isolation that was causing. And so that's exactly what your project did. By bringing these people together, you found a compassionate way to work with that challenge, with that suffering, in a way that clearly had real impact. So we're going to come back to you a little bit later. I'm going to keep going so we get a snippet of each person, and then we'll hear more from you later. But thank you so very much. Next up, I want to introduce Olympia Ammon. Olympia is the CEO and founder of a small, values-driven, women-owned consulting practice called the Olympia Collective. The Olympia Collective is based in Los Angeles and has nonprofit clients all over the world. So Olympia works in the nonprofit space, and her mission is really to empower clients to deliver the maximum impact to the communities they serve. Olympia wanted you to know she's an Aries and loves emojis and puns. Olympia, can you share a little bit about your capstone project and how your project applied compassion to a real world problem?
Thank you, Neelama. And I may need to apply my own self-compassion because my internet has been unstable. What's up with that? What's up with the internet being unstable right when you need to talk? So if I disappear, Lisa's taking over, right, Lisa?
Yeah,
fully taken over. Okay,
we're good.
So this is what's so interesting, and I'm so excited to see many people from my past and current life on this call. But one thing I don't think people realize is the nonprofit space is dependent upon generosity. Generosity is the currency that keeps nonprofits going, right? And this is my almost entire career, is working with individuals, foundations, companies, and finding a way to overlap their values with the value of whoever I'm working for to basically generate the revenue I need to stay alive, right? So my project is on a connection that I believe is key to creating more generosity from both the donor and the recipient side, and that is gratitude. So I think, Neelama, you started talking about gratitude, but when I've taken many years of mindful self-compassion classes, which have really changed my entire being, gratitude is the first thing I go to, and I've learned create and opens my heart. So by doing gratitude practices, and you can literally practice gratitude, it's sometimes something we forget to do. We're tired, we don't have time to think about what we're grateful for, we're starving, we're eating, we're running the kids to school, whatever. Doing those little bits of gratitude practice have opened myself up to things that are unbelievable and nourishing for my heart and for my life, right? So my project is called Mindful Generosity. It's a 3-series course that I hope to offer for free to any nonprofit board member, nonprofit donor, nonprofit executive, anyone who wants to learn about potentially being more gracious and grateful for those that fund them or that could fund them or for themselves or for their friends, anything. Because I do believe once you do that, you become more generous to yourself, which is mindful self-compassion or self-compassion. And others then want to be more generous to you because you're grateful to them. So I'm trying to create it is a curriculum to help nonprofits really thank those that are funding them, donors to really understand how grateful they are for those nonprofits, and hopefully generate actual revenue in return that creates, it really overlaps the core values. So it's called Mindful Generosity. It's 3 classes. I actually am thinking 90 minutes, Jeff, because in nonprofit, they'll do 90 minutes, but in for-profit, only 60. Nonprofits will do 90, just saying more. We have more stamina. So I actually am thinking of that. It will be a free offering because I want to be generous in doing this, right? And allowing people to be in. And I'm still noodling with, I'm actually going to be launching it soon, but I'm still noodling with, do we offer it to one organization? I have several of my clients here. Do we offer it to one organization and see if their board wants to go with it? Or do we offer it to anyone and see if they want to go through as a cohort? But my project pilot that we all have to do as part of ACT was piloting the icebreakers, only the icebreakers from these sections. So my first one is on gratitude. I had an icebreaker for gratitude. The second session is on generosity. I had an icebreaker on generosity. And then the third is how the nonprofit structure and the fiduciary duties of a board and it's the way that they're structured can actually create a way for both gratitude to be present and nurtured, and then hopefully generosity to come in. So
thank you. Oh, thank you so much. You stayed on, your camera held. I'm going to come back to you too, like Jeff, but thank you, Olympia. And I forgot to mention, Olympia is just about to graduate from ACT 2023. She's in this year's cohort and has worked so hard to get her project off to the races here. So wonderful. And we'll visit with you again.
I'll be grateful for Jeff, who agreed to wear the same Stanford colors with me today. Just saying.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Stanford spirit. Good. So next up is Atul Garg was part of our ACT 2022 cohort. So we have a nice mix here of different years. And Atul is a trained mediator and a heart-centered life coach. He most recently worked at a Tampa Bay area nonprofit hospice where he launched and led an AmeriCorps program. It was a grant-funded program that supported caregivers of veterans and military families. And Atul, I cannot wait for them to hear about your project as well. And also, you just like Jeff and Olympia, you were trying to address a very specific population with a very specific suffering and doing it with compassion. So would love you to share with the group how you did that.
Great. Thanks, Neelama. So this was just really an amazing experience going through ACT. And it came at a perfect time because just after I started it is when I actually ended up starting work at the hospice. So it was a perfect place to do a capstone project. One of the entities that was part of the hospice was a program called PACE, and PACE stands for Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. It's a Medicare Medicaid program that essentially allows qualified 55 plus seniors to receive nursing home level of care while they're still living independently. So essentially it allows them to stay living in their house without having to go to a nursing home. And so how this all came about, I ended up talking with the director of the program, and she said, there's issues because this was still during COVID, and hospice and PACE were still following a lot of the COVID protocols even after a lot of other organizations had stopped those mandates. And what she had mentioned is she said, there's a lot of disconnect in terms of the people that are coming to the PACE program, because PACE covers not only all of your medical care, they take care of all of your medical care, but in addition, for social and support, there's also an adult day center that they can come to every day. And so she said, they're feeling a lot of disconnect. So, they have this big room and they've got these tables and there's these, separation panels between everybody, and they're still masking. So they're feeling a lot of disconnect. They're definitely not interacting the way they used to pre-COVID. And in addition to that, they were feeling a lot of hopelessness and guilt in terms of, burdens that they were placing on their families for caregiving. So the capstone project I put together was essentially 14 one-hour sessions over the course of a month. And I primarily used Dr. Doty's book, Into the Magic Shop. I don't know if anybody has read it. It's an absolutely brilliant book. It's wonderful. And I have to share, because I talked about this with Neelama and the other participants, it's the project that I came up with, and I know we'll get into this later on in the panel, that I first had come up with, absolutely did not make my heart sing. It was just a very okay, I guess I've got to do an academic project, and yeah, sure, I'll throw in some meditation, I'll do this, I'll do that. And it's wonderful how just everything came about. I went to bed one night, woke up in the morning, and I was like, I'm going to use Dr. Doty's book for my project, and completely changed my project entirely. And I think because I felt so passionate about the book and kind of getting it out there in the world, it really just turned out to be such a great project. And there's so much in that book. I definitely, if you have not read it, order a copy of it. And there's some mindfulness exercises that I used in my capstone project. I taught about suffering, applying compassion, opening your heart. There's so many different pieces to the project, but it was absolutely a wonderful experience.
Atul, would you just share, because you shared with us, the issue, as Atul said, was disconnection, a little bit of isolation, the participants in the program not really engaging like they used to. Just share a sentence or two about how your project really addressed that and what the impact was.
So what I was seeing was, it felt like people were showing up, but there wasn't really a lot of opportunity for them to kind of speak and to be seen and heard. And there wasn't anything for them to really sort of a common thing for them to kind of talk about, or kind of, it was sort of like they would sit, and there were definitely great things that they had at the Adult Day Center, but essentially, and so as an example, and this was sort of a very last minute thing that I sort of thought about, is it's the little things a lot of times in the projects. When you talk about compassion, I always thought it was must be grand, must be really, really big. And when I really got down to it, and that was the learning for me in this, is that a lot of it is just the simplest things can be acts of compassion. And so one thing I did is I was like, oh, it'd be really nice for people to know each other's names. And I thought, how can we make this kind of a fun activity? Because, there's a full range of people. There's some people with dementia. There's some people with other kind of acute or chronic conditions. So everybody that was on the spectrum, there were a lot of different types of people. So I kind of just went on Amazon, and I'm like, oh, let me see what sort of name tags I can get. And yes, I can get the corporate ones, which are just the kind of normal, there's a color around the border and white in the center. So I kept looking. It's kind of like when you go to the store to find a greeting card. I just kept looking and looking, and I finally found these really cool name tags where it was like stickers, and they had one had a panda, one had a dog, one had a cat, all these different varieties of animals. Simple thing, right? You wouldn't think it would be a big deal. But essentially, at the beginning of each session, I had some helpers with me, and they would write the names on it, and they would get to hand them out to each of the participants. And before I started doing story time with Dr. Doty's book, essentially I said, hey, I'd like to know who's here today. Who'd like to stand up and share their name, share what animal they have on their sticker, and just share whatever they wanted to share. And it was just such a wonderful way to start each session, because it really got everybody animated, because they could finally know, oh, that's that person's name. And just something as simple as what animal they had on their sticker, that really generated a lot of energy. So that was a really great learning experience. It's something that is just, you kind of pops up in your head, go with it and test it out. Maybe it's a great thing, maybe it's not a great thing, but I gotta say, out of everything I did, and I put all of us here who've done capstone projects, we put a lot of work into it. But if I had to really pick one piece of the whole project that I thought that was the best part of it, it was actually those animal name stickers and those conversations that we got to have at the very beginning of each session.
What a beautiful teaching that is, right? Because to your point, we can all get in our head about how big and what this needs to be, and in the theoretical frame of it, and we forget it's those simple acts of kindness. That was such an act of kindness to invite them to stand up and share their name and share their animal and make it easier and comfortable and fun for them to connect because they were feeling so disconnected. I'm glad you shared that story. That's why I wanted you to share it, because it's just a prime example of, we often skip over, we miss recognizing these micro moments of compassion that all of us right now, tomorrow, could do in our life. Whether you take the ACT program or not, right? We can all do something that simple like that. So thank you so much, Atul. We're also going to come back to you later too. But last but not least, I want to introduce our last panelist, who, just like Olympia, Lisa is also about to graduate from ACT 2023. Lisa Kerr, and Lisa is a professor of writing and humanities at the Medical University of South Carolina, where she directs an Office of Humanities. And through the health humanities, Lisa teaches students skills related to communication, contextualization, reflection, and compassion. So Lisa, I'd love you to also share about your project and how your project, just like all the others, is trying to apply compassion to a real world problem. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Neelama. Thanks, everyone. It's nice to be with you. I do work in the world of healthcare, but I'm not a clinician. As Neelama said, I'm a professor of writing and humanities. So a little bit of an outsider, but I've carved out a little niche that relates to the problem that I'm addressing. So I think I would define it as a two-part problem. As many of you may know, we have what we could call a compassion crisis in healthcare, perhaps. And the other part of that problem is that we're not necessarily addressing it in a holistic way yet in health science education, not everywhere at least. And so my project aimed to address those two things by offering an educational opportunity for the students at my university. I'm at the university level, so students from all different programs, whether it's physicians or nurses or OTs, PTs, et cetera, can apply to be part of this program. And it was a small pilot this year of 20 people that we selected. And so they will have 6 sessions of about an hour and a half each, where they learn different principles around compassion and compassionate communication. And so the goal is to teach them things that allow them to become leaders. So doing for them maybe what Neelama and our mentors have done for us, preparing them with information that they can then go out and become leaders of the next generation. And so my hope is that that's what the ultimate impact will be, that the small impact on this group of students will ripple out, as I think we hope, as all of us probably hope our projects will do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So needed right now, right? The compassion crisis in healthcare, and so powerful to train that next generation of leaders, because they are going to be the ones, right, to shift the system, so to speak. So thank you all to all 4 panelists. We're gonna engage now in just a little bit more of an informal conversation with the 4 of you. But I just wanted to kind of have everyone get a glimpse quickly at the beginning of this panel at the diversity of projects, and to see, this is what we try to teach in ACT, but it's easier when you listen to the projects and the panelists like this to recognize compassion is not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? What's going to work in the corporate arena of Adobe is going to be not work, in Olympia's nonprofit world, or the world Atul is serving his clients in, or the students that Lisa is serving. So compassion is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And in a way, that's part of why we created ACT. There are plenty of other compassion trainings out there, but we couldn't find a training that was inspiring, empowering, and equipping people with the skills to go out and design their own compassion-based solution. There's a lot of compassion protocols that one could learn, but that protocol sometimes is like putting a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't quite fit. So this program, and maybe this is a good segue to what I'd love some of you panelists to talk about next, is, you know, how did ACT as a program help each of you, you know, take this idea? You all had an idea about compassion, or you never would have come and invested the kind of time, money, and energy to be in a year-long training. How did that training help you take the idea you already had and really translate it into action? You know, for some of you, it might have been the way we do our project development approach, right? It might, and you can share that with the guests if that's true for you. For some of you, it might have been just the accountability or the structure that the program provided. For some of you, it might have been the mentoring you received or being part of those smaller capstone teams. I'd love to just kind of hear, was there a certain element or elements of this journey together that helped you go from idea to reality? Because I can hear in your sharing right now with your guests, you all have translated your idea into real world reality. So how did you get there? Because I'm imagining people listening are wondering, how do I actually get there? Anyone feel called to start? And you're all welcome to weigh in on that if you feel moved to, but any one of you can unmute and jump in on that.
Hey, Jeff. Oh, did you see that? We did like a virtual arm wrestle, and then I won for just a hot minute. And so Jeff let me go.
Okay,
but
good.
Getting the next one.
All right.
Okay. I will say, so I'm a lifelong learner. And what's interesting is when we prepped for this panel, all of us on this panel like are obsessed with like learning more, right? We want to learn more. We take classes, we have like degrees, and we go take other certifications. Like for those of you who are here that are my buddies, you know that I'm always doing something like this, you know. So I will say, if you're someone that really loves to always be a student in addition to a teacher, right? I don't think you can be a good teacher unless you're a student of the same thing. It really drew me. So like I did mention before that like when I'm actually in training to be a mindful self-compassion teacher, which is a subset of insight meditation. I've been going through intensive training. It's something that really helped me. And I found this program when I Googled training, because of course I want more than what I'm already doing, and compassion together. And that's when I found this program and had never even thought about something at Stanford and something so like amazing being offered. I know it's a young program. We're in our 5th year, I think. So you're still getting it going. And Neelama, you should bring up that this itself was almost like an ACT project that happened, that became its own project. But I would say, like, to me, like the lifelong learner is always there, regardless of what my role was. If I was fundraising, if I was a CEO, if I was starting other things, I've always had something like that I wanted to do. So for anyone who has a quest for knowledge, it's really good. But in particular, that compassion piece, because I was so attuned, and I still am, to mindful self-compassion. It was just so amazing to see it come across the Google search that it was an option. So that's what drew me, that kind of my quest for knowledge, but also the fact that it has compassion in it and training. I have an MBA, and this reminds me a lot of an MBA class. It reminds me a lot of an EMBA or an executive education class, a lot, because people are showing up with a professional face. A lot of us have personal faces too, but what I like about this is we're showing up in our role at work. We're trying to do something, even if it might be compassionate, or our work role might be a stay-at-home mom, it doesn't matter. We're actually showing up as that person. And I really like that, because I do like being with people that are really smart and like really take it seriously. And it's not just an extra class to like do on the weekends. So
thank you, Olympia.
That's my take. I think Jeff should go next, because
I'll let Jeff go next.
We were fighting.
Well, Neelama, I don't want to lose any of our audience here with this statement, but I think you're very generous at saying that I came in with an idea and then saw that come to fruition, because I did not come in with an idea.
Okay.
I honestly believe that this was a case of divine intervention. And why do I say that? I say that because there were a variety of books that were recommended to me. I reached out to many people in my network, and one of the books that caught my attention was the Book of Joy. And some friends of mine on the line are familiar with this story. For some reason, I just gravitated to that book. And within the first few pages of that book, the Dalai Lama distinguishes between joy and happiness and makes the commentary that happiness for many people, and this resonated with me, is externally generated. And as someone who's lived a life that's very focused on approval seeking, my happiness was in fact generated around how do I gain the approval of my parents? How do I, really look externally? What kind of broke my heart a little bit is that the Dalai Lama said that joy is internally generated. And I realized that joy was something that I had struggled with. And I was captivated within these first few pages of this book. And it wasn't until page, I think it was 262, that the Dalai Lama said, and oh, by the way, Dr. James Doty and the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education at Stanford University. And I'm thinking, I'm reading about this conversation that took place in Tibet, and 20 minutes up the road from me in San Jose is a program that's going to enable me to move forward. And I was very skeptical. And we have our monthly meetings of the ACT community. And I thought, as someone who was considering the program, I thought I was sneaking into one of these meetings. I didn't realize they were open to everybody. And about 2 minutes into that meeting, I felt like, wow, these people are vulnerable. These people are honest. These people are trying to change the world and change themselves. So I can go on in more detail, but for me, this was a journey of self-compassion and understanding, just kind of following that voice that said, this is going to make a difference to me. And in so doing, I was able to start doing some things to make a difference to others. So that's a kind of a summary of what came for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. How ironic, page 262, to find out it's right up the road. I love that. Lisa or Atul, was there something about the program itself that helped you if you were coming in with an idea, or as Jeff said, you didn't have an idea, or maybe you changed your idea? Was there something about the program that helped you see it to the finish line? I'd love to hear from you guys on that.
I mean, like Jeff, I didn't come in with any real specific idea. All I knew was I was really attracted to what ACT offered. And initially, I was hoping to do it. We were opening up a new Veterans Adult Day Center that was actually separate from PACE. So it just seemed like such a good fit in terms of, I was already going to be working in the hospice, and it just turned out that there was a delay because of opening that. And so I didn't really have a specific plan, but to me, I think what happened is just every month when we met, we had the teaching module, we had our capstone, project meeting, like every little piece, it was kind of like a jigsaw puzzle where you're just adding little pieces to it. And I still didn't really know what was going on. I think my fear, and I think the fear of a lot of my classmates was, we started in January, and I think even by March, I think we were like, should we be having a capstone project plan already? Like, I think they were due in April. And I was like, feeling like I was like falling behind or something, or that I was missing something, because I was like, how am I supposed to do this? And in the end, it really kind of like what Jeff said, this whole idea of divine intervention, it just sort of happened. And I think part of it is, again, I was in my head a lot about it. It was these preconceived notions of like, I've spent so much time in the academic world. I have three grad degrees, including an MBA. And my mind is trained to think a certain way. And so if you want to say what's the biggest obstacle for like getting through the program, at least initially for me, was getting away from that way of thinking. And when I sort of just let it go, like I said, like I went to bed I had a certain project set, and then the next morning I was like, that sucks. I'm going to do something completely different. And that's really, it was just little piece by piece. Somehow it just happens. And I don't think there's anybody that felt, come April that, oh, gee, I don't know what I'm doing. It might not have been complete, but they certainly had that vision or that idea of what it was going to eventually be. And I think that was just a wonderful thing to see, because once I saw that I could let go of what I thought a capstone project needed to be, and just let it be okay, and once the other thing is, once I finally accepted that it could evolve over the course of of each month. And even while I was doing the capstone project, because again, my MBA had said, you have a project plan, you execute, and then you report incredible results, right? That's just the way things work. You don't talk about, well, this is a challenge and that's not working. Nobody in corporate America wants to hear what's not working, or you constantly tweaking and changing everything. And so once I felt like, oh, it's okay. So when we had my meeting, I had my meetings with Neelama, and when I talked with my project team, and I was like, oh, it's actually true. They're actually saying it's okay to like change things. And even when I had already started my delivering my capstone, I was like, oh, you mean it's okay? I saw something that wasn't working and I can change it for the next session. So that was really freeing and very liberating to realize that your capstone project just is evolving until you finish.
That's beautiful. And that really speaks to, something that's embedded in the program, but we don't always talk about explicitly, which is very much a Stanford methodology from the D school, from the design school at Stanford. There's something called design thinking. And design thinking is basically what you just described. It's a very iterative process. So you test something out, you see what works, you see what doesn't, and you go to iteration number 2. You test out, you see what works, you see what doesn't. And for those of you listening, that is one of the biggest things, I think, of a mindset shift that I see in the hundreds of people coming into this program now, is many people, myself included, feel like, well, we have to have the whole thing perfectly created, then we can go out and offer compassion to the world. And the Stanford model is almost upending that right on its head and saying, no, you get to the perfect thing by going out and offering the half-baked idea first. Test it out, see what works, see what doesn't, try something new, try it again, experiment. That is how we get, that is how we polish the jewel, so to speak. And I think what you're speaking to, Atul, I've heard from many people, there's a freedom when I'm kind of empowered to offer what I can offer now. And here's the truth, that's sometimes challenging for people to hear. Every single one of you right now, in one sense, already is an ambassador of compassion by the very nature of the fact that compassion is our inherent nature. It's who we are. It's who we already are at the core. And in one ways, this program is sort of just peeling back the layers, if you will, of what stops us from being that and living that in our everyday life. And for many people, Jeff alluded to this, and Olympia alluded to this, self-compassion is sort of where it starts, right? Once I know how to offer that to myself, it's much easier to then go out and demonstrate that in the world. So thank you for bringing that important piece in, Atul. Lisa, I would love to hear from you. Was there something about the program, either the structure of it or the way you were mentored or your capstone team or any other element that kind of helped you take your idea, even if it wasn't well formed, and get it into an actual program that you have now delivered? You're the living proof of it, right? You just delivered it very recently.
Yes. I think I will say, first of all, to speak to sort of the overall design and the design thinking of this program, I think we were about halfway through, Neelama, when I sent you an email and said, this is really incredible how the program is designed to step us very carefully toward things we feel more and more comfortable with, and into skills that involve more interaction with each other, although it's interactive overall. So I think the design of the entire program is so impressive. But the thing I'll say briefly that was helpful to me were my small group meetings with my peers. We plan to continue meeting after the program is over, but also the meetings that you are able to have with your mentor, in my case, Neelama, because I remember feeling sort of spun out. My project was getting bigger. I wanted to do all of these things. And Neelama said, your project can be just that first session. Like, it should be smaller. And then when we went through my slides, just reminding me less is more. So just that sort of feedback at different stages that helped me when I felt like it was getting a little bit sort of nebulous, something I didn't know that I would be able to deliver the way that I wanted to. And I really thought the feedback from Neelama in helping me shape that and giving me permission to say a little, less is more. It's going to have that much more of an impact. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Olympia, I see your hand up.
Okay, so see what I mindfully interrupted after Lisa did her amazing talk. That was my mindful interruption of the lowering the upper and hand. So I have to, first off, y'all, Neelama, and this is an ACT project. So I keep bringing this up to Neelama, but
okay, I'll do it.
She doesn't listen. Okay, so I'm going to mindfully interrupt. So the thing that's crazy, and that's what's so amazing about this program, is this program itself started out as something that is very reminiscent of one of our projects.
Right.
And now it's bringing people in from all over the place to do it. And it's 5 years old. So I'm not going to stop until Neelama tells her story. I know she didn't ask for this and it's not planned, but like it is amazing. So like this exact thing and why you're here is exactly what we're all trying to do. And it started as a kind of a whim on a napkin. It's like a perfect story. It's like the Southwest Airlines story for those of you in Texas. They also started on a napkin. So like there was a triangle between like Dallas, Houston, Austin. But this really did too. So I have to let you say it, Neelama.
Okay, I'll do it briefly because then I want to open it up to the audience here, our guests, to see if they have any questions or comments for all of you. But yes, so let me just back up by saying for us at ACT, a capstone project, it sounds like such a big word. That's why I love you hearing what these projects are. For us at ACT, a capstone project is really just a project that addresses some form of suffering in the world and is what we call public facing, meaning it is with real people. And you could hear in these 4 stories, these individuals are working with real human beings and bringing compassion to a real problem. So that's our definition of what would qualify for a capstone project. So Robert Cusick, as Monica Hanson mentioned earlier, our third partner in compassion, who can't be here tonight because he's in Italy right now, and it would be totally non-compassionate to make him attend this at 3 a.m. He and I go way back as old friends and compassion teachers. And we used to teach these things together many, many years ago called compassion immersions. And they were essentially 3-day workshops. People would come, they were in-person workshops, and we would teach about compassion and we would do compassion practices, and they were wonderful. And we did that together for many, many years. And at one of these workshops, Robert and I were out having coffee on a lunch break. And I don't know who said it first, but one of us said to the other, people are coming to these workshops, they're having amazing experiences, and then they leave and we never see or hear from them again. And we kind of are scratching our heads wondering, does any of what's happening on these weekends go back into the world and get translated back into their lives in real ways, beyond just, I came to a compassion weekend and I feel good? What's the impact of this? And we were having coffee and there was a coffee napkin on a table, and I took the napkin out and we started just riffing back and forth and sketching out, what if we could create a training where we could support people? Yes, it would be kind of like the weekends, but it would be so much more, because we could actually support people to take their learnings about compassion and bring them back into the world to help others. What a concept, right? And so we sketched out on the napkin, it would be about a year long, and there would be these topics that we would teach, and there would be these practices, and we would put people into small teams, and we kind of sketched it out in this half an hour coffee. And 2 weeks, and that night we were in the middle of a workshop. So that night I went home and created a web page for the applied compassion training. We were not yet part of Stanford. We went back to our workshop the next day. We said, hey, here's what we're doing. We're doing this training. We're starting it in January. If you want to sign up, go over to Neelama's computer at lunch and you can register. I think we had 20 people in the workshop and we got like 6 or 7 registered that day. So we realized, we're on to something. And a week later, Robert was at a dinner with Dr. James Doty, who you all met tonight. They are friends and colleagues from Compassion World. And Robert, out of his sheer excitement, shared with Dr. Doty what he was doing. And Dr. Doty said, this has to be done through Stanford. This has to be brought in through CCARE. This CCARE will have the reach to really bring people from all walks of life into this program. And well, the rest is history. So even this program, as Olympia said, thank you for making me share the story. Even this program was a simple idea. We didn't have it perfected. It wasn't even half baked on that coffee napkin. But the next day people were signing up for it. And it was like, okay, we've got to create this now. And that was about 5 years ago. And it's been incredible to see it have a life of its own. Everybody, and I hear you, Jeff, that you didn't have a particular idea. I'm guessing everybody here coming to this event has some stirring in the heart of wanting to make this world a better place. You may not know how, you may not know where, but there's some kind of calling. Again, we're all compassionate by nature, so we all have that calling in us. And I hope hearing from the panelists inspires you to think about, what is your unique calling? What is your unique offering? How do you want to bring more compassion into your own sphere of influence, whatever that sphere is? Maybe it's just with your family and your children. Maybe it's just with your neighbors. Maybe it's just a community or a volunteer organization you're a part of, or maybe it is your workplace. I'm sure these stories inspired you today to think more about that. So I want to open it up now. We've got about 15 minutes left, and I'd love to give you, our guests that have been listening, a chance to share with these panelists. And some of the things you could share are questions you might have, because listening to their stories, I can imagine some of you might have questions. So feel free to ask questions of any of the panelists. And I would also invite you to share what moved you tonight when you listened to them. This is something we practice in ACT. It's one of our regular practices, and we call it appreciative feedback. And it's the practice of, often we're listening to someone and something they say really touches us, but we don't always tell them. We don't always take the time to offer that appreciation to them. So if a particular panelist or their story touched something in you tonight, I'm going to also open it up to what we call appreciative feedback. So questions or appreciative feedback or anything else that you're moved to share, those of you that have been listening. Like I said, we have a few minutes for that now. And you can do it in the old-fashioned way by raising your hand, or just like Dan did, pushing your hand emoji, and that brings you up to the top of the screen. So Dan, come on off mute. Welcome.
Well, thank you kindly. I found something common in all of the panelists, and I appreciate it. But in one way, Jeff started out talking about 3 areas that people were uncomfortable talking about. And Olympia, there was something you really touched me with, which I forget, and I'm sorry, but that's old. And Lisa talking about the language differences, I think that's a place where we separate ourselves from each other. And a tool about just a simple thing. And I had the sense that there was something common in all that you were saying, that our job isn't to learn more, but it's to be less, so that we can be equal with each other. And I'd just like to ask any of them to speak to that, if that's in essence, in some sense there.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, the goal isn't to learn more. It's if I understood you correctly, the goal isn't to learn more. It's something else that you picked up in the commonality of these 4 projects. Any of you feel moved to share back what you just heard there?
I guess, well, thank you for sharing your feedback, Dan. It's always nice to hear, that what you hear actually resonates with you. And I think for me, I think that, again, coming from, I love learning. We all panelists, I think, love learning. And I think it just got exhausting, kind of sitting in classrooms and absorbing material, and then, kind of just regurgitating it in research papers and things like that. And so I think what I hear you saying is, and I think what we are saying is that go out and do. Don't just kind of sit in a classroom and learn. I mean, there's value in learning. Like when we came to ACT and we sat and listened to Neelama and everyone every month, that was learning. When we sat with our project teams, that was learning. But I think the idea of solely academic or book learning, I think I see the value now. Just go out and do. Nothing has to be perfect. There's never going to come a point where you've absorbed or know everything. So it's more valuable to take what you know, go out and learn and perfect. And over time, you'll just increase your learning. But the whole idea of sitting in a classroom and book learning, I think I'm done. I don't think I'm going to be enrolling in another graduate program.
We actually, one of our taglines about the program is learning by doing, right? Because there's a whole other level of learning. I think that may be what you were pointing to, Dan, of doing it, being with our audience, being with the people we want to serve, practicing being the change and exuding that compassion out into the world, and that we learn so much more by doing that. My students often are shocked when I say to them, you know, we've just done this great session and you've learned all about compassion, but guess what? That's not compassion. Learning about compassion isn't compassion. Now we got to go out and do the real work of living as compassion. So I love that you picked up that theme in these 4 human beings.
Neelama, I have a comment.
Yes.
David? Yeah.
Yes, David, and then we'll go to John. I see your hand up, John. We'll go to you, Dave. It's okay.
So I'm friends with JJ since 3rd grade, and I think it's kind of funny when he talks about realizing he wants to learn more, because from 3rd grade he was a practitioner of compassion, and so this was truly, he mentioned divine intervention, but it's also something he's been practicing. One thing I envy from him is self-introspection. And so I think Olympia talked a little bit about some of the tools on compassion. I'd like to hear from the other people how they get in touch with themselves, and because that seems to be difficult for me.
Thank you, David. Yeah, would you, anyone else want to weigh in, Jeff or Lisa, around how you get in touch with yourself? And also, I know for some of you, there were things we did in ACT that helped you realize that need for self-introspection, as David was saying, as something maybe even you were struggling with at first.
Well, David gets to hear from me all the time, so I'll defer to my other panelists at this opportunity.
I love it. Okay, Lisa, or Atul or Olympia.
I'll say something to that, because I think that one of the most valuable things that came out of this for me was the personal growth. Although I was here ostensibly for professional reasons, I think the sessions that were around triggers and awareness, that made me really more aware of taking a pause before I respond. Something that Robert talks about, being aware of the amygdala hijack and trying to get the prefrontal cortex working again. So the strategies that that they teach in this program around pausing, being curious about why you're responding, being aware of the fact that you're responding in a certain way before you actually act, so that you can act in a more thoughtful way. Those are things that I think I'll take away.
Lisa, thank you. John, I'm going to go over to you because I see a couple more people have their hands up, and we've got about 7 minutes, so we'll try our best to cover as much of this as we can. John.
Okay, so I think my question's quick, but by way of acknowledgement, it's lovely to be in I have my screen on gallery and have a big screen in front of me, and I see all these faces, and it's lovely to be in a group of people that are about loving kindness and just the sweetness of life and being that way with each other. So for the group, and then specifically the people on the panel who have done the course, like you dedicated resources and time and things like that to practice that. So good for you. And then specifically Atul, he's a friend of mine, and I've known him for, I don't know, about 12 years. And I live in Thailand, and I right before I moved here, I gave up my place to live, and like I had a flight to Thailand like a week later, and Atul was like, well, you should stay at my house for a week. And everything he does is about being kind to other people. And I feel like he should teach this course. He's just my favorite example of this. And we're not even that close, but he's just such a sweet man. And I love you very much because of many things, but because of the example that you are. Okay, so I have a simple question, and that is it all online, or are there any requirements to be in person?
Good question. It's all online. It's all online.
That makes it easy for me.
Yeah, it does. It does. Absolutely. Oh, thank you, John. I notice we have 3 people with their hands up. I'm going to invite you to, if you do have a question or a comment, to put it into the chat now, just in case this room closes and I can't get to you. I will come back to you, or one of the panelists, if your question is for one of the panelists, we'll come back to you. But let's see how far we can get here, knowing the room's going to close in about 5. Bright Sue, you're next.
Thank you. I feel very, very appreciative from Jeff sharing. In San Jose, maybe about 20 minutes to Adobe downtown office. I am inspired by the program, Jeff, you're doing for the people in Adobe, or also for the people outside the company as well. In the corporate, and it is fast and furious. It's very competitive. Sometimes people are not that hopeful how we could change the corporate environment. But by your sharing today, Jeff, and you're sharing the numbers, 98% people recommended the program. 800 people inside Adobe, 300 people outside Adobe. And I feel very, very hopeful in that kind of competitive environment. And there's a phrase like, work hard, play hard. Maybe we can change it into work smart, compassion more. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Bright Sue.
Thank you, Bright.
Monica, we'll go to you. We've got about a few more minutes.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm coming to you from Ghana country, Adelaide, South Australia. Yeah, equally inspired, kind of recalibrated listening to everybody. My question is really around the experiences from the panelists around how the program may have helped them build connections through vulnerability. I know that I find it quite easy to find ways to show kindness and compassion on a daily basis, but where I struggle is when it starts to get a bit deep, and stopping and allowing myself to, I guess, be vulnerable with those people that I'm showing kindness to when they receive it as well, if that makes sense. So really keen to understand how, or whether or not you have noticed through the program an increased ability to build those meaningful connections as a result of the actions that you're taking.
Thank you. Who wants to take that one? We've got about 3 minutes.
I'll love to jump on that, because you used my favorite word, Monica, and that's vulnerability. And maybe it's the fact that I'm older now and later in my career, but I have found that vulnerability is the ultimate strength. I'm sitting here in our Emeryville office. It's, I'm in a conference room. It's dark everywhere else. I'm the last person in the building because I was facilitating all day. But I have found that the more I model vulnerability, the more people respond, and it creates psychological safety, and it creates a compassionate environment. And now that my capstone is done, I don't use words as often like compassionate and mindfulness. But in this room 2 hours ago, I had a slide on this screen that said mindfulness, and it was teaching people how to practice it in pursuit of feedback. So I find ways in, and I think vulnerability is the common denominator for all of us.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm going to just take this last minute and a half that we have to say if anyone feels moved to write some words of appreciation for our panelists into the chat. I'm sure they would love receiving that from you all. There will be another time later to share in the larger group when we go back to the main session in about a minute. But if any of you want to contact our panelists or get in touch with them, feel free to use this next minute to share anything like that into chat. I see, Chris, you had your hand up and I can see you shared that you wanted to thank Atul. So Atul, make sure to read what Chris shared about the animal stickers.
Yeah, I read that. Thank you, Chris.
That is so very sweet. And I just want to give a big shout out to my 4 panelists, really and truly, Olympia, Jeff, Atul, and Lisa. To me, you guys embody what it means to go out there and do the sometimes scary and courageous work of compassion in the world. And as one of them indicated to you, the program requires a lot. There's a lot of attendance required, and this isn't an on-demand watch a recording. We do a lot of in-person live things. So before this room closes in 30 seconds, I want to offer my deep bows of appreciation and respect to all of you. And I know the world is a better place having you 4 and your projects and all that you're doing in it. And a big thank you to our guests joining in this room. We're going to go back to the main room where you'll get to hear a little bit more about ACT and then get to say goodbye to everyone in the larger group. Thanks so much, everyone, and take good care.
So welcome. This is our breakout room. And then let me tell you who's going to be here that's part of this remarkable panel that I am so delighted that they could join us. We have here as part of this panel, they're grads and soon to be grads of ACT 23. First is Nanhi Singh. She's the Chief Customer Officer at a company called Imperva. And her project in ACT the title of it is The Burnout Breakthrough, Empowering Change Through Compassion. Another panelist is Cyndi Weeks-Bradley, founder and CEO of a company called The Equity Process. And Cyndi's project title is Bridging the Gap Between Racism and Humanity in the Field of Education. We also here have as a panelist, Brooke Cassoff. Brooke's the founder of Diabetes Sangha, and she's a learning and development manager at a company named Vistage. And her project was the Diabetes Sangha. And then we have Ian Ong. Ian's a counselor and a psychotherapist practicing Koru, and he's a Koru mindfulness teacher. He's practices Ampelos therapy and in the Ampelos Collective in Singapore. And his project is Arriving Before Ourselves, integrating compassion into therapeutic work with clients experiencing anxiety and low self-esteem. So I'm going to invite all of you to come off of mute and just take a moment to say hello and welcome our panelists. And panelists, come off of mute and say hello and welcome the people that are joining us here today too.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Doty here. Hi, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Well done, well done. And then find your mute again. It's one of the things that we do consistently in ACT is invite everyone to come off mute and welcome one another, say hello. So we have a sense that we can warm up this space because this is a very large classroom that we're in. It's the whole world classroom that we happen to be in here together today. So let's go ahead and begin. I am delighted to offer some points of inquiry and questions to these panelists. It's a little bit more of a conversation style that we'll be engaging in, not one person presenting for 10 minutes and then the next person and the next person. But we've, talked about and had some conversations and reflected on some questions in advance of this. And it's as if we're all sitting around a fireplace on Stanford's campus, having a conversation about something that's deeply meaningful to us, which is compassion and applied compassion. And all of you are there with us as well. So I'm going to take this first question and invite Nanhi and Ian to respond to it. And the question is, it's really a request, I should say, not so much of a question at first, but it's to share a little bit about your applied capstone project, Nanhi and Ian, and then give us a little bit of a sense about the kind of impact that it's had too. And Nanhi, would you be willing to go first?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica, for having me here. I'm excited. I'm just a little nervous. I hope that I can offer some helpful content for everyone who's here. So my project, my capstone project, is on burnout. I wanted, when I started in the ACT program, to pick something that could have an impact in my workplace. And I was particularly curious to see how I could do this without it being dismissed in my workplace as, just some touchy-feely thing that a woman manager is trying to drive. And I think I found that in going through this process. So I decided to do my project in two parts. The first part was me picking something that I could personally drive and change in my workplace. And then the second piece of it was to create a workshop that I could then enable my immediate team members, the folks who report to me, to understand how to use the same content and the same understanding about compassion to drive this further and sort of have a ripple effect across. So it wasn't just limited to one project that I do, but that it would have a ripple effect that allowed other people to drive it. So I was really inspired when Monica taught us a teaching module on burnout. And as I was listening to the content, it just struck me that burnout is the complete opposite of engagement. And at my company, we really value this concept of employee engagement, and we measure it on a very regular basis. We do it every quarter. So we pay attention to what our employees are telling us, and we try to drive actions based on their feedback. And so I realized that I didn't really need to go and do a lot of surveys to get content, because I already had the content from all the engagement surveys that we already had in place. And so I started to look at that, and I have access to all of the details, including every single comment that everyone on my team that rolls up directly under me writes. So it's about 350 people globally. And I have teams all across the world, and everyone has a different experience based on, obviously, not just the culture of their country, but also the business culture there. So it really gave me this wonderful, source of information that then allowed me to zero in on what I could drive and change immediately. And so it's interesting. I'll just quickly share with you. And Monica, if I'm running too long, please tell me, and I'll try and shorten it. But our company, as many corporates do, offers paternal leave, and we offer maternity and paternity leave. But what I did not realize is that what we didn't do is actually make sure that we had allocated enough budget to enable coverage for the time that people were out on paternal leave. So what was happening was that the team members of the person who was going on paternal leave was having to extend themselves and work extra hard while the team member was out on paternal leave. And this was just it's a flaw in the system. And I really just wanted to also pick something that fixed the system and created a system that is compassionate. And so I worked with our my HR and finance business partner, and we built a model. And the good news, to cut it quickly short, is that this is now part of our financial planning process. And we are actually right now in the middle of the financial planning process for 2024. And this is an important part of planning. We have all the data on, how we have how people have taken maternity or paternity leave. So we know what ages and so on, and our HR team helped with that. So we can actually build a model and plan for that. And then, of course, drilling down into the specifics of it with the various teams then enables us to be more accurate about it too. And I tested this out as a pilot with my team in Singapore. And what was really just crazy was that team, once I provided the resources to cover for maternity leave, they actually broke records in the company for the business results that they drove. So I had evidence, and I could show the management in the company that compassion is good for business.
Thank you so very much, Nanhi. I deeply appreciate it. And what a surprising to some, to demonstrate and actually have the numbers that supports compassion is good for business. So thank you so much for kicking us off. I'd next like to turn to Ian Ong. And Ian, would you please share a little bit about what your capstone project was about and give us an example, give us a taste of the impact that it's had. Ian, you're up next.
Sure thing. Thanks, Monica, for having me on this panel. And it's really quite a journey for me when I took this program last year. So just some background, I'm actually a therapist, a psychotherapist trained in some of the most cerebral approaches. So, the very traditional, for all our lives in school, we are all trained to use just this part of our body. And we have the whole body, but we're just using only just this segment. And we go through life just using that part of our bodies. And so the people that I work with are those who struggle with anxiety, stress, depression, and self-esteem issues. And early in my practice, before I joined ACT, there was always something that was missing for me. There was like this huge elephant in the room that was waving its tail in my face, but I was not able to see it. Because anxiety is something that is experienced in the body. But most of the approaches that we have were all approaches that look over here. And so there is this disconnect for me, and I start to wonder what was missing. I needed something to help my clients to descend that 12 inches from the head to the heart. There's this saying that goes that the longest journey in the world is that 12 inches journey from the head down to the heart. And how do we then cross that deep chasm between the rational component and the lived experience of an individual? And that was what brought me to this program. So in my capstone project, which was entitled Arriving Before Ourselves, I find that in anxiety, and for many of us, that while we may have pretty good relationships with people around us, sometimes we struggle with relationships with ourselves. I find that myself included, and even for many people that I work with, that the way that they talk to themselves, me included, will be something that we never dream of saying to another individual. We can be very cruel to ourselves. We can be very critical. We may say things to ourselves that we will never dream of saying to another person. And so therein lies that question for me, that if we are, if that is the way that we talk to ourselves, if that is the way how we interact with ourselves, is it then any wonder that anxiety is not far from us? And so in this project that I did, one of the amazing things from the capstone project was the experience of appreciative feedback that we have in our capstone groups. And the appreciative feedback was something that really embodied for me what it means to be present to another individual. Right? Whether it's in school or in the workplace, we are always trained to be combative. Right? And prior to this, I was from finance. And so we all know that this is the place where I will beat down your budget. Whatever I have is better than yours. But when I stop listening to you, or when you stop listening to me, that is when some kind of violence happens between that relational continuum. And I find that, as what Nanhi has mentioned just now, it is very true that compassion does deliver results, because although it is a company, but companies comprise individuals, and every individual has a mind and has a body, and that how our body and our mind connects will deliver and change how things can move. And so that was my experience of learning how to descend that 12 inches and pay attention to what happens inside here, finding the language to describe whatever is happening below the neck, being able to be present to that experience, being able to accept and to sit with or whatever arises. And in that process, we learn to befriend whatever is happening in the body. And as a result of this, we become more able to sit with not just ourselves, our discomfort, but with anything that may arise in life. And I find that that journey is a journey that starts in 2022. It doesn't end with the end of the ACT program, but it continues through life. And so in my own journey, working with clients now, following the program, I just noticed how there is so many aha moments when they can immediately recognize that, you know, whatever I struggle with is not because I have some weakness or I have some flaws, that I cannot control my emotions. We are always told mind over body, but maybe that's not so true. It could be that it could be body over mind as well. And the recognition of that is so empowering for myself as well as those people that I work with. So there's very briefly the project that has started me on this journey of recognizing the connectedness of us as individuals and even us as communities. So thanks, Monica, for letting me share this.
Thank you so very much, Ian. And thank you both, Nanhi and Ian, for starting this. You know, it's so interesting on the one hand to hear about applying compassion in a corporate setting that not only benefited teams, but actually became, you know, policies and practices and around allocating resources for maternal and paternal leave. And then also that now we have Ian describing how, as a therapist, that he's applying compassion and the principles and the ideas and the practices to help clients navigate that 12-inch journey from their heads on down to their hearts and live in a way that maybe provides some relief or freedom from anxiety and even with greater self-compassion and esteem for oneself. So I love beginning here because it shows the breadth of possibilities in ACT when it comes to applying compassion. And now I'd next like to invite Cyndi and Brooke to share a little bit about each of their applied compassion projects. Cyndi, let's start with you, and then we'll move to Brooke. And you know, you're welcome to share about the impact your project has had, if that resonates with you in this moment. Or you might also share about how ACT helped you develop that project or deliver it. Maybe it was a capstone team or the mentoring, or maybe there was some content you received. Either way is okay. But we'll start with you, Cyndi, and hear about your capstone project and its impact.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thanks, Monica. So my particular project came, I would say, in a selfish way, more than likely. I really wanted to work on me. I worked with schools for a long time. I was even a school principal, and then I worked for the state that I lived in, Department of Education. And I was coming very beyond frustrated with how racism was playing a role in the classroom. And it appeared to me, I don't know, just in my little Cyndi head, that no one was seeing this but me. So I needed to become very clear on how I could support folks, because impact mattered, and not just the individual impact that it was having on me, but as I looked around every room, there was an impact that was taking place on other people, and then the impact of the community of a classroom or even a school. So what I wanted to do was just find out how compassion can open up other people to understanding, like, this is going on. There's no ed reform right now in America, but we need to do something immediately. Like, we can't wait. And what ended up happening was I saw how racism was playing a role. I grew up in a predominantly a neighborhood with BIPOCs. So it was like, okay, that's where I grew up. That's what I knew. I went to school with predominantly white people. So that kind of opened me up. So I saw all the worlds that I could think about. Then I came to ACT and saw this global community that functioned on nothing but love. Like there was nothing else here but love. And even if one did not speak, English, they still expressed love through their body, through their songs, through their music, through art. There was so much ways that love came through. So I said, I'm going to take love as a step to really help students and help parents and help principals and help others understand. But first, I'm going to start at the top. If I can help superintendents understand how important love is for their communities, then we can really reach students. And that was my approach. What I ended up doing before I even, I had thoughts in my mind, like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. I'm pretty creative. I created a framework, just building relationships in school and thinking about engagement and inclusion and instruction and the impact that it has on not just one child, but every child, and belonging. How do we get students to feel as though they belong in the, the classroom, in the community? We go out and we survey schools. My organization goes out and we meet with families, we meet with students, we do focus groups, we enter classrooms and use this protocol, this framework to really assess what's going on. And since leaving ACT, we've worked with over 2,000 people, including youth in my state, just experiencing schools across, and I'm in Massachusetts, so experiencing schools across Massachusetts that are doing well, but just need a little more. So we're enhancers in that capacity, or schools that are really not thriving and bringing life back into them through compassion. And for me, the compassion piece was actually like, oh, it's empathy plus action. Now I can say that's compassion. And just explaining the difference between empathy and compassion has been a big eye-opener for everyone that I work with, because in my world, empathy is everything, exposing folks to compassion and really letting them know what the 3 elements of compassion are, and letting them know about fierce self-compassion and fierce compassion, and drawing boundaries on behalf of other people's children is important, has allowed my organization and me to move the work in schools in Massachusetts.
Cyndi, thank you so very much. And I just wanted to add, let me know if this is right, if I'm recalling this right. It's not only the work in schools in Massachusetts, but you're working up and down the whole district and the whole system in Massachusetts. So I just want everybody to understand that, Cyndi's, the work that she's doing is impacting from superintendents to school boards to principals, all the way down to teachers and students, and all the way back up and in all different directions. So it's real. So I feel like I've got that right. And so you're really talking about influencing and informing and changing systems. And it happens to be school systems. So,
and Monica, what I will add is I recently was granted a grant by the state, the Department of Ed. So now we're working with the Department of Ed as well, using some of our work to improve their systems as well, to support their systems, and they also trickle down to schools. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And honestly, folks, this is what happens in ACT. I remember I talked to Cyndi maybe 2 weeks ago, and I think that you mentioned like that Department of Ed grant, but I didn't recall that it had actually, been awarded. And
it wasn't awarded until afterwards.
So literally, this is like, 2 weeks later, and now we can add the Department of Education to that system. And so I'm just sharing a perspective that, Cyndi was in the program in 2022. So not only is there impacts that happen then and throughout 2023, but as we're approaching the end of the year, there's also additional impacts like receiving a grant from the Department of Education. So thank you so very much, Cyndi. That's it's an Easter egg. Thank you. It's fantastic. Brooke, I'd love to hear from you. Please share with us about your capstone project and the impact that it's had.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a joy to be here. I feel like each time I come back together with the ACT community, including prospective ACT community members, it's like a family reunion of sorts, like global family reunion. So my capstone project is called the Diabetes Sangha, and really it emerged out of kind of like a few years of this itchy curiosity. In full transparency, when I joined the Applied Compassion program, I was maybe like 2% confident that I'd be able to actually follow through, create, even an idea for a capstone, let alone execute it. But I had been practicing compassion in my own life, and had found it to be especially helpful in terms of managing the challenges that arose for me almost daily living with type 1 diabetes. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 15 years old and have been living with it for almost 20 years now. And became aware over the course of practicing meditation and then getting introduced to compassion-based practices of just how painfully my own mind and thoughts would respond to the inevitable ups and downs that come with managing a chronic condition each day. And as I was started talking with friends in the diabetes community, I became aware of like, oh, it's not just me who's experiencing this. And as I dug in, I found out that it's actually people with diabetes. They say at least 40% of people with diabetes at any given time are experiencing significant levels of diabetes-related distress or burnout. And that people living with type 1 diabetes are 2 to 3 times more likely to experience depression than the average person. And so I was like, gosh, compassion's been so helpful for me. I wonder if there's something there that could be a benefit for the broader community. So it was really that kind of question and that curiosity of like, could there be something that led me to the Applied Compassion program? And so I began by kind of just delving into the research, also procrastinating a little bit in the process to avoid the inevitable risk that came with actually offering compassion out in the world and being a leader of compassion. And discovered that there is a ton of research that supported the benefits of compassion in both addressing and preventing burnout across a number of different populations, from first responders to medical professionals. And I was like, I think this might apply with my community as well. And so what started as a self-compassion training specifically designed around the most common challenges that people with type 1 diabetes face. So like, how we respond to fluctuations in our blood sugars, how we navigate the shame and social stigma that we can encounter out in the world as we're trying to take care of our bodies and our spirits with diabetes. To also being willing to reach out and ask for support, even if we may feel like we'll be a burden to those we love. And so out of that self-compassion workshop, I had the opportunity to connect with just a small community of others in the diabetes space that were also intrigued by this question of like, could compassion be of help? Could it be kind of a missing piece of the kind of regular care and support we each need as people navigating chronic conditions? And so what emerged from that was an online community for people living with type 1 diabetes from around the world to come and practice mindfulness and compassion each week together. And so over the last almost 2 years now, we've grown to offer now free virtual meditation and compassion-based practices online almost 5 to 6 days a week. And also have been getting more and more involved in other community events and in-person conferences, as well as some research as well. So it's like the gifts of ACT keep unfolding year after year, but really it all just started with a curiosity and I think a willingness to say like, okay, if no one else is going to do this right now, why not me? Why don't I be the person to take the first step and see what emerges?
Thank you so very much, Brooke. I think you're naming And I really appreciate you naming the beginning of many of our journeys, and it includes mine. ACT for me is my capstone project that keeps developing year after year after year. And I personally connected when you shared there was maybe like a 2%, was it a 2% chance that you thought you could deliver the project? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think even that might be a
Have been a
generous
stretch.
assessment.
I understand. I resonate with that, right? Like it seems impossible, and yet everything is impossible, right? Like everything is impossible until somebody makes it possible. And the thought really resonated with me too. Like, well, like seems like there's a need, seems like there's an interest. Like why not me? Like maybe it is me. And so I deeply appreciate your willingness to share that part of this journey too. And again, I'm actually almost stretched to my ends of awe at this moment, hearing Brooke share about her capstone project. And on the one hand about diabetes and the diabetes Sangha, and that like starting kind of this internal exploration moving out, and then juxtaposed to what Cyndi just shared with us, also a deeply, I'm sure, internal exploration and series of observations, but yet moving out into an established system and network, through schools, through school boards, through superintendents, and now all the way out into the Department of Education. In some ways, like such different projects, and in some ways, such similar kinds of projects as well. So thank you so very much for sharing both of your projects with us. I want to turn our attention a little bit to this next kind of inquiry about how has ACT been transformative for you? And, there's kind of a blend that happens in ACT that for some people and many people, it's deeply personally transformative. And for others, that are still engaged in their professions actively, it can be professionally transformative as well. So I was thinking about this question about, what's something you're doing now to apply compassion that maybe you weren't doing before you participated in ACT? And Ian and Cyndi, I was thinking you might have a response to that first, and then we could move to Brooke and Nanhi. So Ian, how about you? What's something, how are you applying compassion now that you weren't in ACT? And if that doesn't resonate with you, I'm really interested in like the transformative experience you might have had personally because of ACT. Ian, the question goes to you, and then we'll go to Cyndi.
Thanks, Monica, for the very insightful question. For me, I think ACT really showed me what it means to be human. I think that is very freeing. And I just remember what Monica said just now. Sometimes really when things happen, or was it maybe Neelama shared that as well, but when things happen, sometimes when we may have, for me, sometimes I do have certain encounters, whether both from my own past or even in the present, that might make me question what it means to be human. It might even make me wonder whether is it worth it for us to invest in the messiness of what it means to be human. And each time that happens, I just bring my mind back to the community that I had in ACT, the small group that we had, the laughter, and just being able to see and be seen. I think that is very important. For some of us growing up, we sometimes find ourselves seeing others but not being seen, or hearing and not being heard. And some of these experiences can be very damaging because it stays in the body and it influences how we move through life. And for myself, as well as many of my clients, we struggle with anxiety that can be very crippling at times. And recognizing that the anxiety desires a certain kind of connection, whether a connection internally or a connection that comes from the community. And so how ACT has really impacted me personally was it shows me how do you be present to an individual, especially in the early stages of doing the project, when I find that I struggle to give shape and form to the project. It is in that very personal and challenging situation that I was able to draw inspiration not only from my capstone team members, but even from Monica herself, in the way how she was able to literally hold her hand up this way and kind of like offer to me what I offer. It's like those little pieces of gemstones that she collects. I didn't even think they were gem. I honestly thought they were trash. And then she offered it back to me and said, have you seen it in this way? And it's that gentleness of the way she just holds it back. And I began to see clearly, so that actually what I thought was trash may not necessarily be so. And she didn't even have to tell me that. It's just the way she embodied it. And the community in ACT does exactly the same thing. How when we hold a space for each other and when we are seen and heard, and I think that gives us that capacity to see and hear ourselves as well. And so this is one thing that I have brought with me beyond the ACT program, using it on myself. That before, sometimes when I'm quick to criticize or engage in that negative self-talk, I would pause and say, am I seeing? Am I hearing myself? And that, of course, also changes the way I see and hear other people too. So it has definitely changed the way I interact with my friends, but also importantly, the way I interact with my clients, both in the individual setting or even in a corporate setting. Sometimes I do work in a corporate setting as well. And I find that when I can be present to them and I can actually affirm their humanity, more so by just being present to them and co-regulating with them, I find that that changes the dynamics. And I can imagine that if one individual can do it, if a team can do it, or even organization can do it, can we just imagine what is the power that can happen when connected people see and hear one another? I think that would be amazing.
It would be amazing, Ian. Oh my gosh, I can imagine when connected people see and hear one another, the possibilities that start to emerge from that, because I get to experience that often and regularly here in ACT, right? Like that's part of what happens in the ACT community. So there's a community of people that are coming together, and we actually have formal practices of seeing and hearing. We practice and train in that. And then one of the outcomes is that we'll be able to move out beyond ACT and start to offer that to others. And the impact or the feedback that we're getting is it's starting to have exponential impact in the world. So thank you so very much, Ian, for naming some of those, the transformative parts of ACT 2 through your direct experience. And Cyndi, how about you? I'm curious about what's been transformative for you in ACT. And I had a note here that said, and if it resonates with you, you're welcome to run with it. The biggest thing is, one of the biggest things was, what is your little piece? So if that sparks remembrance, that's fantastic. And if not, please move in a direction that is meaningful for you. But what's been transformative for you?
That resonates very well. And Ian, thank you for kicking that off, because everything Ian said times a gazillion. And Maya Angelou has, it's either a poem or a saying, but anyhow, you should be a rainbow in someone's cloud. And to me, that's what ACT was. Like every time we got together, even if there was a cloud, this was like a little rainbow, and it always felt good. But what Monica just shared, that was awesome. Oh my goodness. I am all over the place. I was like, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I just want to take on the world. And one day Monica goes, Cyndi, what is your little piece that you could do? And I was like, all she wants me to do is a little piece. That's it. Well, that's doable. And that really started me on the path of just really being grounded and present, and just, what is a little piece that I could do? I wake up every day and I say, Cyndi, what is a little piece that you could do today? And that's all I'm interested in. Every day, just doing my little piece. I can't do everything, even though I may have the heart or the desire to do everything. But I found that just taking care of my little piece is so large. And ACT gave me the ability to look at that little piece as not a little piece, but really my best, whatever that is. So it's always big, it's always bright, it's always welcome, and it's always enough. And just what is that little piece that you could do? And recently I started to say, and it gives me the best ideas. It's like, Cyndi, what is just your little piece you could do in the, and I call myself Cyndi, okay? So I was like, Cyndi, what is this little piece that you could do in the equity world? I was like, you know what? Impact, flashcards. Flashcards helped me growing up. I'm creating flashcards. So now the little piece that I'm working on, which is going to be a huge piece, is I'm creating flashcards, just different impact sayings on flashcards that schools could use to begin conversations, to deepen their knowledge, to deepen their understanding, to deepen their practice, because that is the piece that's missing. And I believe if they can deepen their knowledge, they can deepen their understanding, they can deepen their practice, they can deepen their skill, and they too will have that little piece, which is a huge piece, that they can lend to their communities. So yes, what is the little piece that you can do? Because it's much bigger than you could ever imagine.
Oh, Cyndi, thank you so very much. And you're so right. The little piece can be a huge piece, and yet it helps to start with what is the little piece, right? Like that's a gateway and doorway in. Thank you so very much. I'm going to move over to Brooke and Nanhi, and I'm curious to hear from you first, Brooke. Like, I'm thinking about how has ACT been transformative. It might have been transformative personally or professionally. And if it's useful, it's kind of that inquiry, like, how are you applying compassion now in a way that maybe you weren't before you were in the program? Brooke, here you go.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, the outward kind of aspect of my participation in ACT was definitely impactful, just in terms of realizing like, oh, actually I can do this, and getting that. Now it's like I can no longer say like, I'm not sure about this, because there's evidence that proves like, no, you can, if you have an idea, you can follow it through, or at least follow the breadcrumbs. But I think personally, the process of actually creating an offering of compassion for my community, for me, sort of like pulled back some of the veils on compassion as well. Like I remember leading the self-compassion training, and I went in, I was like, I feel pretty grounded in this. Like I've been doing the work on the self-compassion and like really steeping myself in the research. And after the first session, I was like, wow, I never even thought that self-compassion could be relevant, or compassion could be relevant to those areas. Or like, wow, like I never would have like connected with compassion from that perspective or through that lens. And so I think that for me has been one of the personal gifts of compassion, is just being able to have a shared experience of it with others, which for me in my own practice has deepened and added dimensionality to my own compassion practice, and as I have noticed, like helped almost like both tenderize and strengthen my heart, to be able to respond to whatever comes up in my life or in the world, with a reflex of compassion rather than a reflex of judgment or harshness. And so that's been the biggest transformative effect that I've noticed.
Thank you so very much, Brooke. Then that's, it's so interesting, the connection, because you did have a personal practice of compassion already, and then how the experience of sharing a shared experience of compassion also both tenderized, I think was the word you used, and strengthened then that kind of expression. And I'm guessing it was for yourself and for others too. It's really interesting. There's some really interesting research coming out of Princeton University right now about the impact of being in particular groups like this that are engaged in practices like compassion, and how it has an amplification impact on us individually that is enduring, that like it looks like it endures even up to a year after we maybe haven't participated in the group. So I was reminded of that as you were sharing your direct experience. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to say I'm N of one, but that holds true from my experience.
And N of one, and I think the research out of Princeton included about 1,200 people over the course, pre and post, and maybe 6 months in between as well. So there's at least 1,200 other people that have had that experience. And I've had that experience too, that my personal practice actually gets amplified and enriched in a way that's enduring and way more than my own personal investment in it when I practice in groups or when I come together with groups that share some of the same interests and practices. So we're an N of 2 and part of 1,200 people, other people that were part of that Princeton study. So thank you. Nanhi, how about you? What's been transformative? How are you applying compassion now, and maybe a way that you weren't before ACT? And maybe it's personally, or maybe it's professionally, or maybe it's a blend of those experiences.
So everything Ian, Cyndi, and Brooke said completely resonated with me. So I've had very much the similar experiences. I think that ACT has definitely transformed me personally. And because of the personal transformation, I have been able to drive transformation professionally as well. I think the first lesson that I learned that just deepens every day for me is the awareness of suffering. And I think that I'm now able to recognize suffering in a way that I could never before. And it enables me to, as Brooke said, put off the judgment, right? So when you see it differently, when you see it as suffering, it allows you to respond in a different way. And I think the other thing that Cyndi said that resonated with me is where she talked about, Cyndi, you said something about empathy plus action is compassion. And I think for me, the response was sometimes leading me to empathic distress, and I wasn't even aware of it. And I have now been able to turn that around and drive action rather than letting the empathy really bring me down. And that's mostly on the personal side, with family members and friends, but at the workplace too. Sometimes I think I've been able to actually implement a whole host of little capstone projects. So it's just been little actions that have come about. I've made some changes to the org structure, for instance, and it was driven with a awareness of the suffering that I could now see and a recognition that I needed to respond to it in a different way than I would have done last year, as an example.
Thank you so very much. And you're so right. It's almost like little micro capstone projects that happen, right? On the one hand, it could be personal transformation around recognizing suffering that maybe hadn't been recognized as suffering previously for self or other people that are close to you. And then it can also happen in the workplace too, perhaps even for people that are close to you, or looking and responding to an organizational chart in a way that is compassionate and that would have been a little bit different than you would have responded in a year ago to seeing that same information. So thank you so very much for sharing how applying compassion has been transformative, or ACT has been transformative to you too, Nanhi. I wanted to take go ahead.
Sorry. May I
No,
say
go
one
for it,
thing?
Cyndi. Yeah, of course.
In thinking of what the two of you said, I can now sit in spaces where I couldn't sit before and breathe and be happy. And when I went to my 2 last physicals, my blood pressure literally, I was like, is there a problem? Like my blood pressure was 119 over 80. No, over 76. 119 over 76 was this very last time. And the time before that, it was like 115 or something like that over 70. So that even that, like just losing your ego, like the universe is so much bigger than me is what I recognize in here. It's like, it's not personal. People are just going through stuff, and how you respond to them is a reflection of how you're feeling inside. And this program really just it has dropped my ego and has made me feel so liberated. Now I can sit in spaces that really made me angry and I can teach, I can learn, I can feel, I can sense, I can support in ways that really matter to them because I hear differently than I've ever heard before. So I wanted to add that as well.
Thank you for adding that, Cyndi. Holy cow. You can sit in spaces that would have made you angry and hear differently and act differently and respond differently. And I've got to say, you shared that with me a couple of weeks ago, and it was about how you were willing to help leaders start to see and grapple with or acknowledge their blind spots and move them towards a compassionate way, not just individually, not just the individual one-on-one impact, but move them towards a compassionate way of enacting policies or thinking about policies and practices within systems. And I have to say, like, I did not have that willingness until I talked with you. So I practiced sitting with my discomfort as you were sharing that. And I was like, damn, Cyndi's willing to do that. She's willing to talk with leaders, help those leaders move, you know, through their experiences and really move through it's move through blinders and perhaps come to another place of compassion and compassion in their positions of power with enacting policies. So I haven't accepted the mission yet, but I'm contemplating the mission in a way that I would have never contemplated it before until I spoke with you. So thank you for your willingness to sit in spaces that have made you angry, and that now you're sitting in them differently and hearing differently, and then providing you the opportunity to do this for others, and not only other leaders that you're working with, but that also informs me too. And I just want to share with everyone, like, this is actually how it works in ACT, right? Like, this is the kind of experiences that happen in ACT. You know, there's mentors and faculties and founders, and there's also remarkable, wise leaders that are here to also sharing their wisdom with us as well. And so it's a remarkable emergence of compassion and action that happens in ACT, both for the individual projects that each one of us have, but then also the way we inspire and support each other too. So thank you for letting me tap into that and say thank you, Cyndi. I'm contemplating the mission. I'm contemplating the mission. You're welcome. What I wanted to do is just zoom out for a moment and see if anyone here has a question that they'd like to ask Nanhi or Cyndi or Brooke or Ian. And please keep your questions short if possible. And maybe think of it, just be reflective or be aware if your question maybe has a appeal to, you know, several people that might be here. So I'm just going to change the view back to a gallery. We'll just pause here and see if anyone has a question for Nanhi or Ian or Cyndi or Brooke, or maybe even me. But I'd really like to keep it focused on the panelists. And if you do, you can raise your electronic hand, or you could take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask your question. Oh, Paula, welcome.
Hi. I have applied and I'm ready to participate. I have a meeting on Monday with my CEO to ask for his support with funding. What is the one thing I need to be sure to say to him that's going to make him jump right in and fund the whole thing? And thank you all very much for everything you said. I appreciate it so much. It's been very inspiring.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. So Paula, I'll take a little piece of that. Have you received, and I'll give Nanhi and Brooke and Ian and Cyndi, if you just a moment to think about that, if you have a response. But Paula, I'm curious if you've received, we actually have a packet of information that's written for thought leaders and decision makers. Have you received that packet of information?
Yes, and I've sent him a summary of that. That we're having a follow-up conversation based on that.
Okay.
I just want to be sure I say the one thing I need to be.
Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit, Nanhi, do you have a response to that? I was thinking about, what was yours?
Compassion drives business results.
Yeah, compassion drives business results. That might be the phrase. And could she quote you on that, Nanhi? Would that be okay if she like used your name?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Smashing. Thank you very much.
And Paula, there's plenty of evidence that supports that. In addition to that packet, I can provide you information with CEOs this year that I've mentored and led in workshops around compassion and, business results as well. And I just got back from a business conference with significant leaders from around the world that are also convinced that compassion drives business results too. So if you need any backup, we can help.
I would appreciate that very much.
Of course. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
How about other questions for Ian or Brooke, Nanhi, Cyndi?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jose. Thank you for sharing. I had to really think about a question because, Monica, you asked such great questions that really was helpful. But question for anyone who's inspired to answer is, what was something that was a challenge that you didn't expect? And what did you learn from that?
That's a great question, Jose. Well done.
I can go. So, Jose, I think what was a challenge that I didn't expect is how sometimes life would get in the way of my best intentions. And I would sometimes need to be in a meeting instead of the practice sessions. The practice modules are typically on Fridays between 10 and noon Pacific time. And even though I'd block my calendar, I would sometimes be dragged into a meeting. And in the beginning, I think I had to learn to apply self-compassion to myself, to not beat myself up over that. And then I think I also learned that there are very effective ways of making up the missed sessions. And ACT provides you with a lot of resources that enable you to do that. And there are people within your mentoring group that are willing to partner with you outside of those hours and meet with you separately to help you to practice. So that I would say was the biggest challenge, but I did learn to overcome it.
Yeah, that was a brilliant question, Jose. Thank you so very much. And Nanhi, you got the #1 answer to that question. It's like the challenge you didn't expect is that life happens, and we deeply respect and are tender around that in ACT, and can be supportive for all of the different things that occur in ACT. I'm thinking in my mentoring group right now, we have kind of both ends, someone who just unexpectedly lost their life partner. They passed away. And in my mentoring group, on the other hand, we have someone that unexpectedly became pregnant during the course of ACT and is due this month as well. So between those dimensions and all of the other dimensions, one of the challenges I think that happens in ACT that you can expect, that you won't expect, but you can expect and plan for, is life happens, and we do too. And we have really strong approaches to support people through those experiences too. I noticed that there's a couple of people in this circle here today that are also participants in ACT, and I just wanted to see if they wanted to add anything to this conversation before we move back to the big tent, and that'll happen in 5 minutes. So anyone else that's here from ACT, would they like to say hello and say a few words about their experience in it? I'm looking at you, Remy. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Monica. I firstly just have to acknowledge the panelists. so humbled. The work, your thoughts, your perspectives, are so incredibly inspiring. And even though we've been through the same program, the expressions of compassion that I see, just even demonstrated here, are so sincere from the heart. They are meant to make this world better. And they're meant for us to fall deeply in love with what we wish to see in the world and make that happen. I've never been part of a program that has been better executed than ACT. The quality of materials, the evidence-based approach, the caliber of mentorship, the support of the peer group is unparalleled. And I have my MBA and my master's degree, and I wish something like ACT was integrated in those schools. So if there's an opportunity for you to take it, don't let anything get in the way. Just take it. It will change you. It'll make you happier. It'll make you more connected with the world, more connected with yourself, really, and then with the world around you. And it'll allow you to show up in a way in which you'll be proud of how you've conducted yourself and use this time on earth. Sorry, I hope I didn't go too far deep into this, but it is truly transformative. And what you see today is just a touch of the expansiveness of this program.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Remy. Oh my gosh. And right back at you, all that you shared on behalf of the panelists. You too are a distinguished participant and soon to be alumni as well. Alice, would you like to share a few words here? We just have a moment or two left.
Sure. Yes, thank you. And thank you to all the panelists. That was really inspiring to hear your projects. I think I'll just add that just about the transformation, that I also, like Brooke, had a compassion practice prior to entering ACT, but the 11 months of meeting and going through the practices really helped move me. I love the evidence. I love the neuroscience behind it. So I very much had compassion in my head that I knew it was this wonderful thing, but I have, ACT has helped me embody compassion. And so it's very transformative in that way. And really, I guess, as Ian said, it got me from my head to my heart. And it's through all the practices that I was able to get there and really feel the transcendence that comes with it. And then feel it further as I was able to share it out into the world. But first, from that transformative process that I experienced.
Thank you so very much, Alice. I really deeply appreciate that, and giving us a glimpse in terms of how it can be transformative, even if you already have a compassionate practice too. So everyone, our time will be up in 1 minute here. So I want to first thank our panelists, Nanhi and Cyndi and Brooke and Ian. Thank you so very much for sharing a glimpse of your applied compassion journey, both during your time in ACT and then as it extends on beyond it. Thank you both our impromptu panelists, both Remy and Alice, for sharing parts of their journey as well. And then thank you all of you who are interested in applying compassion. Maybe you're feeling the urge or the pull or having the recognition or the need to apply compassion in the world. I put in chat, if you have any more questions, you can reach us at our program's email, which is actprogram@stanford.edu.
I'm super excited to be here to talk to all these wonderful ACT alumni and participants about your different experiences with ACT, the transformative experience you've had, and your impactful capstone projects. We'll have about 60 minutes in this breakout room, and most of this will be a conversation between me and our panelists, but I'm going to leave some time at the end for audience questions, comments, questions, appreciative feedback. And I'll do my best to kind of look at the timing. We're going to start by going around with introductions and an initial question. And then if we have time, I'll circle back and ask each panelist a second question. And for the panelists, I wanted to also let you know to feel free to share a little bit about your capstone project. Not all of the questions ask specifically about what your capstone is, but I know that the people in the audience would love to hear a little bit about the work you've been doing. So if you'd like to share a little bit about your capstone before answering the question, feel free. And I'm going to just get started with our first panelist, which is Jennie Moreau. She is an executive speaking coach, story midwife, and professional actor. She creates and leads interactive workshops for professionals from a wide range of industries that empower them to explore, strengthen, and make conscious choices about their communications. Her capstone project is titled Working with Triggers, Navigating Work and Life. And my question for you, Jennie, is how did ACT's ongoing emphasis on mentoring, i.e. mentoring groups, capstone teams, and direct one-on-one mentoring support throughout, help you through the design, development, and delivery phases of your project?
Thank you, Kristine. Well, a little bit about my capstone. I am a professional actor. I also bring the theater arts into the corporate and nonprofit world as a model for effective communications. And people wanted to go deeper. I'm not a psychologist, so I was timid about that. Wanted to study more about compassion and specifically help folks work with triggers. So the science that I was getting, the support that I was getting, the exercises I was learning specifically from Neelama were things that I could use in a workshop that I did with 3 different groups with an existing client. I said, would you like to go deeper? Let's do this trigger workshop. That was the professional part of my workshop, of my capstone project. The personal portion was that during that year, my father died of kidney disease. And as the universe would have it, there was a nephrologist in we talked about, my cohort was 60 people. My smaller mentoring group ours was more like 21 because we had 60 people in the cohort. And as it would turn out, one of the folks in my mentoring group was a nephrologist. And I was like, okay, I don't want to overstep, but we became friends. She became an unexpected support through an incredibly challenging time. And there were many other healthcare professionals. My hearing about their experiences helped me navigate the healthcare system, have compassion during COVID and some unexpected challenges with those healthcare workers. And I think I would have been the fierce advocate for my father, but would not have understood at all the same way if it weren't from the intimate conversations with that group. Then from the mentoring group, we had an even smaller capstone project group, 7 people. Let's see, we were from India, Belgium, California by way of Scotland, Turkey, me in Chicago. And they also, as I was going through this personal project, I'd be getting messages all times of day or night because they were from all over the world. So here was support coming in, this unexpected gift. In terms of the professional piece, we were encouraged to practice, to name out loud what you are doing. So it's not lost on me that I am an actor. One of my teachers used to say, okay, we're not called thinkers, we're not called feelers, we're called actors. Yes, and that's a mantra I use with my acting students, but I especially love that it was part of ACT. How do you take the idea and activate it? So the cadence of the program, the smaller and smaller groups, the practice out loud, we would try things, we learned to give one another appreciative feedback. So it's not just, oh, yay, that was great. Very specific, accurate feedback, help one another set milestones. And then, of course, I had Robert as my mentor. So he was an incredible person. I had a huge idea. Triggers is a huge subject. Helping to whittle that down into bite-sized pieces that my various audiences could work with was critical. And on the personal level, talking about grief.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the gifts just keep coming.
Thank you, Jenny. I love that. I think one of the key things I took away from your responses, the unexpected gifts. You can come into ACT with the idea of a project and you think that that's just going to be what it is, and it ends up being this broad community of support and kind of going through the process yourself. You're learning all of these amazing things and being able to spread that compassion while you're grieving, while you're experiencing this. It's just beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And let's see, next up, we have Felix Yerace, who is an education and engagement coordinator for the National Association for Student Activities and the Assistant Executive Director for the Pennsylvania Association of Student Councils. He teaches leadership and positive psychology courses at his high school, and over his career in education, his students have raised over $1 million for charity and have hosted many events and programs, including the 2019 National Student Council Conference. Felix holds degrees from several institutions, including a Master of Applied Psychology degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and he oversees an online network of positive psychology teachers and secondary schools from around the world. His capstone project is titled Building Compassionate Responses in Student Leaders, Resources for Student Activity Professionals. And my question for you, Felix, is how did the process of being part of a supportive capstone team where you could safely share and experiment with new ideas help and empower you to develop your capstone project?
Well, thanks, Kristine. And depending upon where you're at in the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so it is nightfall here for me, but it's an honor to be here with all of you. I'm in the current ACT group, so I'm looking forward to graduating with my certification here in a couple of weeks. And I will tell you that it's really hard for me to believe that the 11 months has gone by as quickly as it has. It seems like I was just starting in the program. But I would also just share, before I get to Kristine's question, one of, I think, the greatest parts of this program is that there is such an active alumni group, and that you get to interact with the alumni as soon as you start this program. And so what I'm really excited about is being able to join that alumni group and being able to continue on with ACT, because your ACT journey doesn't stop whenever you graduate from the program. So I'm looking forward to that. As Kristine said, my capstone was for high school students. I do a lot of work both here in Pennsylvania as well as nationally with student leaders. Oftentimes those students are the most active and engaged at their school. They're oftentimes the most driven and dedicated students. And quite frankly, they're often the ones that are most in need of compassion and compassionate resources. I work with a lot of adults as well that are working with young student leaders. And those individuals are also looking for resources and tools to be able to work with their students. And so for me, it was a privilege to be able to take some of the learning that I got from this program and be able to show how it could be applied for youth in a secondary setting, and be able to show how we can apply what we're learning in this program for all of them and help to empower my peers and my colleagues across the country. And I was fortunate to be able to deliver my capstone over Zoom. And I did have participants from across the country that were able to participate in my capstone, which I also think speaks to the flexibility of the ability to be able to do your capstone in a way that works best for you and the audience that you're looking to work with. In terms of my team was incredibly supportive to me. And one of the biggest reasons, and I was also fortunate to have Robert as my mentor, I didn't have a firm idea what I was going to do for my capstone when I first came into ACT. There are some people, as Kristine said, that come in with very firm ideas, and they stick with those. There are people, and certainly in my team, we had an individual who came in and because of some events in her life had to completely pivot and change what she was going to do. And then for me, I had come in with an idea. I knew I wanted to do something in education. I am a full-time high school teacher. I had seriously considered doing a program for adults because just as much as students need compassionate resources, so too do adults. And the reality is that if adults aren't being supported, then they're not going to be able to support their students. And so I've talked to Robert about how I'd like my second phase of my capstone to be more of the work with adults, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that as well. But one of the things that my team helped me do was to be able to narrow down my topic. And just as Jeannie said, the ability to be able to have those monthly check-ins, to be able to try things out, and in doing so in a safe environment. And quite honestly, sometimes you try something and it works really well, and sometimes you try something and you realize, this didn't work the way I thought it was going to, and I need to make adjustments before I release it to the wider world as part of my capstone. It was incredibly helpful for me. Even just having a monthly group and being able to do those check-ins and having those accountability partners was also something that was really wonderful. This year in the current ACT group, there's 90 of us. I'm in Robert's group, which is about 30 of us. And then we have the capstone team, which was 6. And just being able to have that monthly support system and just be able to share with one another and just to be able to connect. I was appreciative not only of the resources and feedback they gave me for my capstone, but just to be able to be a part of that smaller group and to be able to have that shared experience was also really helpful on a monthly basis to be able to consolidate my own learning. And I was very fortunate. Team 5 for Robert is awesome this year. It is the best team. I am a little biased, but it is. I will tell you that we are placed according to time zones. So I will tell you that in my group, there were 5 of us in the United States and 1 of us from Peru, but we were all in roughly the same time zone so that we were able to collaborate. And one of the nice things is we were also able to email and provide support for one another. So it's not just that you meet for 2 hours once a month. There's a lot of conversation that goes back and forth. My team didn't meet outside of our schedule times, but there are some teams that did. And again, our group, we preferred to work a little more asynchronously. That seemed to work for us. But it was incredibly helpful just to know that every month I was going to be able to check in with those individuals and that we could provide that support for one another and amplify each other's projects.
Thank you so much, Felix. I think that you definitely highlighted the support system that you have in ACT and how important that is. And also congrats on your upcoming graduation and on your capstone project. Super exciting. And also bringing up the alumni. I think many people in ACT still stay in touch with people from years past. So you have that to look forward to as well. Thank you so much. And then next we have Nancy Lee, who is a Korean American based in Colorado. She is a private practice psychotherapist, educator, advocate, and PhD student. She is continuing her compassion training through the Compassion Focused Therapy Diploma Program. Her clinical and research interests prioritize the well-being of individuals with marginalized identities. And her capstone title is Applying Compassion, Singular Intent, Dual Process. And Nancy, the question I have for you is, describe how your capstone project applied compassion to a real-world problem.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I'm just really thrilled to be here. And I can piggyback a little bit on what Jennie and Felix said, and then broach my capstone a little bit. So I graduated in 2022, and actually my group, my capstone team still meets monthly. And actually everyone is in Europe, and I'm the sole American. And I had a chance to visit 3 of them in Europe just in August. So I can speak to the power of care and connection through this program. So my capstone, the title isn't super descriptive. I left it a little bit general because this really was about sort of this dual process, I think, that Dr. Doty talked really so brilliantly about, which is this idea that we have to sort of heal while we serve and serve while we heal. And that actually was the dual process I engaged in. So as Felix said, some people go in with a clear idea of what they want to do. And I went in with a clear need. Being a trauma therapist and an educator who trains people to help others through trauma, going through collective trauma was really hard. And so I was just sitting with a lot of my own pain and thinking, I have to figure this out. And so this program was really just a beautiful structure and a community in with which to do that. And the way I ended up doing that was creating my own dual process framework. So I integrated some theories and trainings that I had. So one was the dual process model of coping with bereavement. And as Jennie broached, grief was a big part of my work. I had experienced loss as well. I'm sorry for your loss, Jennie. Thank you for speaking so beautifully of it. And I think we're all, to some degree, experiencing vicarious or personal grief, like loss. I think there's just so much to be unsettled by, and some very real fears of how to get engaged and be of service and not get harmed ourselves. emotionally, socially. And so I was really like fleshing out this idea of who I am as an emerging leader, as an educator, my voice. So my capstone included aspects of that, grief model, but then also trauma theory, intersectionality theory, really bringing in who I am into this mix and dealing with a lot of the anti-Asian hate that was going on in the US. There was just a lot of big stuff I was kind of wading through. And I ended up doing some public facing things like creating webinars, content. I wrote a book chapter, which I had access to through ACT. So I got connected with someone who is publishing a book, a writing tutor. Like these were all things that came directly from networking. And that in and of itself was a pretty big journey for me to talk about my story, about my trauma, and then to do it in a compassionate way. And it's an intense process writing about your lived experience. And I can honestly say, like, I hope to use some of the capstone project and maybe creating some more curriculum, thinking about how to integrate this into supervision and education, and really like go beyond this idea of like self-care and really like center and ground in healing and collective care.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Nancy. I loved what you said, the heal while we serve and serve while we heal. I think that's the major part of ACT that you don't necessarily expect, but it just happens while you're in the process of creating your capstone. And it sounds like your work and your capstone has just like continued to grow and spread. And that's so beautiful. And I love that you visited your group in Europe. That's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And a move on to Soot Fong, whose current purpose in life is to serve and support communities of different diversities and disabilities. She's also a caregiver to a special needs child. Successfully completing her capstone project has made her longtime vision and dream come true, to be able to support fellow caregivers like her in a meaningful and compassionate manner. She strongly believes in paying forward and giving back to the society with her time, resources, and pertinent expertise. She works with women and children at risk, supports those in near-death experiences, or supports those near death, and works with different communities to achieve community healing. That's beautiful. And her capstone title is Nurturing Resilience with Compassion Among Caregivers of Special Needs Children or Adults. And my question for you is, compared to other programs you've been affiliated with, what is something that's unique about ACT?
Thank you, Kristine. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, wherever you are. I must say, listening to Jennie, Felix, and Nancy, I'm going to graduate in November this year. So listening to them is like, as I hear it, it's like, wow, that happened to me too. Wow, that happened to me too. Wow, that happened to me too. So it just like, oh, wow, okay. I'm not the only one. So that is really what ACT is doing. It's really benefiting in so many ways to so many of us. So I just feel so privileged to have been part of it. So as to what is unique, I would say, if I just put it in one statement, if I'm just a caregiver to a special needs son, and through ACT, I could now help to elevate the suffering of those who are in the same journey as me, the fellow caregivers of special needs children. But much more important, when I started, I wanted to help the special needs folks, the children and the adults. And the way to get through them was not directly, but through their caregivers. And because I do it through the caregivers, guess what? My impact is now double, because it covers the caregiver and the special needs children. And I'm quite sure they will impact others. So what you have heard so far from all the ex-graduates and alumni is that the program To me, it's so unique because it's complete and impactful. Why complete? Well, you heard all the different stuff we do. There is the monthly teaching, the monthly practice, the one-to-one mentoring. So if you think about it, I basically cover every channel of learning. So there was no stone left unturned. In a way, so if I've missed something, but then that's probably, let's say I missed the class, but I get to practice it. So I got experiential learning. And then there is the one-to-one support. So to me, it's complete. And that also make it very impactful because as I remember, as I complete every project paper, there were questions asked that was curated so carefully that it made me pause and reflected deeply at each key milestone. Most of the time when we say we do reflection, we reflect, but in this case, it really makes you think deeply and broadly. So the scaffolding of the ACT teachings, they provide that valuable breadth and depth. But I tell you what was most unique about it. They took all that, and the crux of it was applying all those theories and practices and turn it into something new for me. And something new in my area of passion or expertise. And I learned by doing. I did falter, but guess what? We were allowed to pivot. And when we pivot, we got support. And I think in my group, my small group, somebody pivoted 3 times and she still did what she did, and so beautifully. So to me, I think that's just totally unique. And this is like a golden learning and development opportunity all in one for what I call the inner works. So I got to create and see things from a new lens, a compassionate lens or perspective that I probably have not seen or used in this area before. And that for me is huge growth. And it gave me hope. It opened my mind. Actually, it not only opened my mind, it opened my heart and my will to commit to build new grounds that just maybe I can alleviate some suffering and in area I have passion for. So when I pulled together and delivered my capstone project, what it gave me was a sense of purpose in life, meaningful life purpose that tells me in my heart, this is why I am getting out of bed every day. So I attended a program that not only helped me to realize my vision and my dream, I actually felt so empowered after delivering the project. I feel I am good enough. And it fulfills my need that I matter, I belong, and I have something meaningful to contribute to my community. So in the ACT program, in the last 11 months, I was seen and heard for who I am, without judgment. And with my group, with Robert, I was held in compassion. That to me is compassion in action. So having personally experienced it, how can then I not go out and do the same for others? And that's inspiration in action. So that kind of sum up for me what I found the program so unique, because the whole experience has been truly transformative and deep out to the mentors in ACT. amazing what they have done and pulled together. So that's my sharing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Oh, I loved that so much. And congrats on graduation next month. It's so exciting. Can't believe it's almost November. But I love that you went in with your idea and then doubled your impact. I think that's, just such an important thing, is that spread of compassion. Once you start to do your research and learn and actually have the experiential practice part of the compassionate action, you start to like broaden your lens of the compassionate receivers from your project. And I just love the importance of feeling seen and heard for who you are without judgment, because that's where beautiful projects can blossom and continue to grow, which I'm sure yours will continue to grow and expand even after graduation. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
The next panelist we have is Mary Haun, who is a compassion and wellness advocate at Living Prayer Ministries with 10 years experience of facilitating classes, podcasts, workshops, and guiding others along their spiritual journey. Specializing in A Course in Miracles, 12-Step Recovery, and Applied Compassion, Mary uses that experience to help others achieve a sense of peace and acceptance regardless of their history or their circumstances. Her capstone project is titled Recover with Care. And Mary, my question for you is, how were you personally and/or professionally transformed by delivering your capstone project or by participating in the ACT program?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Kristine, for that introduction. And thank you, everybody, for sharing. I've really appreciated everything that you've said. And, just want to echo all the beautiful things that have already been mentioned about the ACT program. Excuse me, I got a little upper respiratory thing going on, and so you might hear me cough and so on, but it's such a pleasure. I feel so humbled to be asked to be a part of this. Robert was my mentor. I was a graduate of the 2022 cohort. And, this question, I was really thinking about it over the last couple days, and everything has changed. How have I been personally transformed? Not only by delivering my capstone project, but that too was very transformational for me. It was every single step. I didn't know what the heck I was coming to ACT for. I don't even know how it got on my radar. This is a true story. I really had no idea what I was going to be doing here, what it was about. I did feel very drawn to the program, but like I said, I don't know if I had, I think I saw it somewhere and I just put my name in to get more information. And the next thing I know, I hear something popped up in my email, and it just kind of went from there to there to there. And then I found myself at the open house, and I'm like, oh yes, I definitely need to do this. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so then I met Robert, and so ACT was something that I believe my higher power knew that I needed it, and I didn't know I needed it. And so for me, the kind of loving acceptance that Robert provided, his warmth was just like resonated immediately with me. So our one-on-one interactions were so pivotal to my personal growth, but I didn't really realize that when I came into the program that it was going to be about me. I really just thought that, okay, I get it. I'm just going to be delivering some compassion aspect into the world, and I'm going to learn more about compassion, and that's a great thing. And I couldn't really see the big picture. And so I just really want to encourage people that if your heart is drawn to this program, there's a reason. I didn't know why I was here either, and you might be that person right now. And so I had a couple ideas, and I didn't know what I was going to do, like I said. And so just like somebody else had shared, my group was so helpful. I was able to run sort of these two project ideas by my mentoring group. And all of them had the same feedback. They just reflected back to me the thing I was most passionate about. And then it was like, oh, it came crystal clear, because to be honest with you, I was quite a ways in before I had decided what I was going to do, because I was just so conflicted about it. So my group really gave me this beautiful reflection of clarity, and I came into this program with a lot of inferiority. The people that were in my immediate group were PhDs and emergency room doctors, and a psychiatrist who was also a tenured professor at a Big Ten university. And here I am, a little old, vet tech from the middle of Iowa. And even though I have all this experience and done these things, I really came in feeling less than. And then I got put with all of these, what I perceive to be very high ranking people. And I just didn't think I could deliver what I was like sort of meant for me to do. At any rate, everybody I worked with was just so open, so encouraging, really helped me to see that I'm the expert in my own experience. My goodness, that was so mind-blowing. I'm an expert in my own experience. And Robert reminded me, there was one point that I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know where this is all going. And he's like, Mary, just trust the process. Remember that you're flying the plane at the same time you're building the plane. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I can get that. He helped me stay focused and just continue to trust the process. He helped me remember, and this program did, or to even understand more than remember, that two things can be true at the same time, that I can be full of fear and courage, that I can be aware of other people's suffering and my own suffering, and also not need to fix it or to change it, which is profound for me. And so my capstone project, which I landed on, was Recover with Care and Recover. I'm in the 12-step program, and I had noticed that my time in the program, that there seemed to be an element of self-compassion that was missing, especially in my part of the program, but also for so I'm in the family side of the program and not necessarily in the addict or alcoholic side of the program. And I just kept noticing people around me with a lot of self-talk that was very negative, and I could see it in them, but I couldn't see it in myself. So through this process, I became aware and realized that I had a harsh inner critic, and that I have had this harsh inner critic my entire life. My inner narrative was very negative, and I wasn't even aware of it, truly. And so the more I went through this program, the more I built confidence, the more encouragement I got, the more I was able to apply the principles of the ACT program to myself, which is a gift that I didn't even know I was going to be receiving, changed everything. So once my inner narrative became corrected, and I could apply compassion to myself as I could see myself struggling in these different situations, people around me were picking up on that too. And I work with a lot of women in the program that I'm in, and I'm able to help them give compassion to themselves. So in my project, I actually had, I think, 13 different people that I actually delivered my capstone project too, and there was a lot of positive feedback and people that just had these transformative experiences just in this little, 3-hour workshop. But it's really the one-on-one work or the little drops of self-compassion idea that I can give to somebody. My daughter, I mean, the way that I speak to my daughter today is so different than it was before ACT. The way that I speak to my husband, the way that I talk to myself. My love language is encouraging words. And it's so funny because I didn't have any encouraging words for myself. I didn't have any self-compassion. That's not, that wasn't a family heirloom that I received. And so that was a gift of this program that, like I said earlier, I didn't even know that I needed. And I just think of, not only in my personal private life, but also in my work life, to be able to extend compassion. The professionals that I work with, it's like, I don't have to advertise it and I don't have to have a 3-hour workshop. It's just in these every little day moments that I'm just spreading and planting these seeds within myself and hopefully within the people around me. It's just been incredibly beautiful. And I honestly can't think of one area of my life that hasn't been impacted or changed by the program. I absolutely am grateful and, just amazed that there is something like this available. And with, now my little associate's degree, I also have a Stanford certificate. I mean, I just feel, pride is not something I would say that I have a lot of pride, but I am just really over the moon about being able to have my Stanford certificate because I can feel really good about that and just paying it forward. So thank you guys. That's really all I have on that.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and congrats on the certificate. I think we all can agree that it just feels like such an accomplishment to finish this course, not just with the capstone, but every single little droplet, like you mentioned, every area of your life that's touched by these compassionate teachings. And you also brought up the important point of coming into ACT and not having a solid project. You weren't even sure what you were coming into. And I think there can be like a sense of imposter syndrome when you enter into a course and people know exactly what they want to do. But through both the work of self-compassion and having a supportive group like the one here that's reflecting what you're most passionate about and sharing appreciative feedback, it just really can be such great motivation to just change the world with compassion. So thank you so much for sharing about your wonderful project. And then we have last, but certainly not least, my friend, Ambassador of Compassion, Abhishek Sharma, a lifelong learner experiencing and sharing with the world the depths of life with the supportive container that is compassion. That's so beautiful. And his capstone project is titled A Compassionate Conversation with Autism. And Abhishek, my question for you is, how did ACT help support you to actualize your dream? How did being in the program serve as a catalyst for you to act on your own ideas or vision?
Thank you, Kristine, for that wonderful intro and the question, and all my panelists here joining me and all of us today, sharing the experiences and the vulnerability and the courage it takes to do this. It's inspiring for me, especially because public speaking is terrifying to me. So having all of you guys talk and share has been a compassionate container for me as I've been sitting here. So my project, I knew I wanted to do something to support the autism community. I have a loved one on the spectrum, and I would see him over the years how life unfolded for him and the difficulties he went through, and we would have these conversations about his experiences. And often they would take a tone of him saying, I need help, I need support, I need someone to talk to. And I tried to be there for him as best I could. And so the interesting thing about many of those conversations that we had was just how connected we had become, and how easy it was to relate to him as just a person, as a human being. And many times he would ruminate on how he doesn't feel like he doesn't fit in or he doesn't belong. And I would let him know that you're human and you do belong. You belong in this world. You belong in our family. You belong in the friendship that you and I share. And so we would have those types of conversations, and it would just get me thinking about how many others on the spectrum are dealing with this, and also just the family members that have to face it as well. And so felt I felt called to do something and to respond with compassion. So that's the project that I started with. I didn't know how I was going to deliver it. I had no clue what I was doing. I just kind of had an idea and needed support. And at that time, I felt like I needed um, a ton of support. I felt like I needed um, a type of support that just isn't humanly possible, I suppose, looking back. And so starting from that point, ACT ACT was actually a huge support in helping me realize that I really didn't need as much support as I thought, if that makes sense. Um, and and that all I needed was to be seen and heard. You've heard our panelists talk about the power of being seen and heard, and just how that can be a catalyst. Mary mentioned that her love language is words of encouragement. Well, that's my primary love language as well. And so a big part of the program is appreciative feedback. So when you're sharing updates on your project, or when you're sharing ideas, when you're sharing exercises that you want to come up with, you have a community, you have the mentors reflecting back to you what they appreciate about it, and that somehow, as if by magic, it feels like it kind of just shows you what you actually need to do, and it gives you the fuel you need to take that action. And so that's basically what I experienced for 11 months, and I needed 11 months of that. I needed all 11 months of appreciative feedback, and it helped me. It helped me to do my final delivery, which, I started off thinking that I wanted to do a coaching service for autism, still do. Um, but I realized that I wanted to pivot to more of a personal route. That my work with my cousin was unfinished because he actually helped me develop a part of my project. And the feedback he gave me made me realize that the compassionate conversations that he and I have been having, um, that is what is going to be my project. And what was the huge difference maker in that was that he had the opportunity to help and support me in my project. And he gave the gift of being seen and heard. And for him, that seemed to be the game changer. It wasn't that I helped him to be heard and seen, that he could be that support for me. And so I think that astonished me, because it kind of goes back to what another panelist said, that these projects aren't just about the people we're serving, they're about us too. We are included, we are a part of these projects. So I, because of that, I think um, I was left feeling loved, knowing what love is, and um, it turns out that's all I really needed. I didn't need all the things that I thought I needed, all the support. I just needed to know what love was. And so that gave me the space and the freedom to play around. And after the program, I kind of felt like unlocked, liberated, if you will. And that's all because of the ACT community that was with me through that, and that continues to be with me through this day. We all still stay in touch, and that's what's beautiful about this program, that it doesn't end at the 11 months. It continues. This is a lifelong journey. So, um, so yeah, that's how I actualized my dream. I didn't even know I had that dream, but it kind of figured it out as I went.
That's a
Thank you.
beautiful thing. Thank you, Abhishek. I think I love what you spoke to, the common humanity of the compassion practice, of going into this project expecting to do something for other people or for someone else like your cousin. And then once you start practicing the compassion and making someone else feel seen or heard, it opens up the space for them to feel safe to do it back to you. And that's one of the most important things we can do for other people. And just that being a catalyst to offering that to other people. And then it just continues to ripple out into our communities. And yeah, I'm just so thankful to know you. I graduated the same year as Abhishek and Jennie, and we still meet monthly, which just speaks to the close connections alumni have with each other, and just always pushing each other to continue in our practices of compassion. And I just want to name that we have about 15 minutes left, so I can start to go around and ask the second question, but you might need to answer it really briefly just to allow some audience questions. And I also want to name that I want all of the panelists to feel like they could share maybe links, maybe their LinkedIn or websites or email addresses in the chat, just so people that are watching could stay in touch and hear more about your work, because I just think that that's such an important way to stay connected and learn more about all the amazing projects that you still have going on. And I'm going to go back to Jennie for question number 2. We're going to do like a rapid round of questions. So this second question is, how to
The lightning round.
Lightning round. Yes, the lightning round. I need like some graphics to pop up with lightning bolts. But the question is, how did participating in a diverse and dynamic global community and the resources of fellow ACT peers support and inform your project?
Well, I named that we had, in my small group, there were people from India, Belgium, Italy, Turkey, Scotland, the United States. And Abhishek was in my mentoring group. So learning about different cultures, we had someone who was practicing Sufi, we have Buddhists, we had practicing Catholics, we had people who are like, the universe is it. I'm not going to name a religion. I learned through conversations with Abhishek much more about autism. You just heard a tiny bit of that. We all practiced grounding meditations. That's something that happened so that it became a muscle. We all did it slightly differently so that if we were going to use that in a workshop, boom, it was practiced. We practiced hosting. So different people, so we actually had to do and get to try these different things. I would say the biggest thing would be skill sharing. We mentioned that we meet monthly. It started out as a book club. We turned it into, okay, pick a theme, and different people will share resources, whether it is a podcast, whether it is a theme, whether it's an exercise they want to try. So broadening my horizon beyond my own lived experience, I think is the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. And that keeps going. So yeah, keep bringing it.
Yes, keep bringing it. I love that, Jennie. Thank you.
Sure.
Felix, your second question is, learning by doing Stanford's D-School methodology, how is this method of project development helpful or supportive for you?
Yeah, I'm really excited to answer this question. I'm actually going to drop a link in the chat for all of you because I don't know about anybody else here that hasn't gone through ACT, but I know I had no idea what this was whenever I came into the program. And what I came to find out was that when you're doing your capstone, you've heard a lot about the capstone projects tonight. You really have the freedom and flexibility to do whatever makes the most sense for you. As one of the other panelists said, you're the expert of you, but you're also the expert in your own domain and your own area. And so I remember one of the first meetings I had with Robert, and I asked him, I said, like, what's your expectation? And he said, whatever you want, which is both liberating and intimidating all at the same time. But what I would tell you is it was really wonderful. And I think Robert said it best, how they put us in the pilot seat. And, you know, the biggest thing with this program is you're going to go out and you're going to do something that's real world, that's going to be an actual challenge. You're going to have the freedom to experiment, but you're going to have the opportunity to be able to craft a capstone of your choosing, the content, the delivery. But really the biggest thing is that you're going out there in the real world, and then you're going to come back and reflect on it after you've had the opportunity to do it. And it is a challenge, but I would tell you, I've done other programs. This is probably the most meaningful certification program I've ever personally been a part of, because doing the capstone not only allowed me to consolidate so much of the learning that I got from this program, but also allowed me to go out and start using it to help other people immediately. And some of the feedback that I received from doing my capstone was so meaningful to me. And it really does make an impact, and it allows you to spread this message, as Monica and Neelama said, that the world so desperately needs. So it's a wonderful part of this program, and it really is what separates this from so many other programs as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Felix. I love that the ACT program really pushes learning by doing. So you are in the pilot seat of your experience here, which is such a beautiful thing. Thank you. Keep going on this lightning round with Nancy. Your second question is, how did your capstone project lead to something new or unexpected for you personally or professionally?
Yeah, so I've already mentioned some things that it led to. I won't go over them again. I think the biggest thing that wasn't unsaid is, you know, really this intersection of compassion and equity. And so really wanting to lean into that in clinical spaces as well as my dissertation. And then I think just personally, what's coming up for me, even hearing the panel. So I have a neurodivergent daughter. And so I come in with that perspective of being a caregiver, and just even like this personal impact, like my heart is full knowing the world is a better place because people are advocating for people with disabilities. People are supporting caregivers. And I think that's the personal impact. I want this world to be a better place for my children. And so thank you all for doing that.
It's beautiful. Thank you. And thank you also for your own work in that, making the world a better place. Thank you. All right, let's go next to Suit. Your second question is, how did ACT help support you to actualize your dream? How did being in the program serve as a catalyst for you to act on your own ideas or vision?
So I just want to highlight one key one. To be honest, I was actually in Act 22. What happened was that 8 of my fingers got injured, so I could not even type my report. And really, it was due to the compassionate heart of Monica and the mentors that they allow me to defer to Act 2023 and I didn't pay extra fees. And I got to continue. And actually, because of their compassionate action, it just strengthened my resolve that I should go ahead and do my project. So that was like, whoa, if not for their action, I would not have done what I have done. So I think that was the biggest thing that helped me to actualize my dream. And the other one I just want to share, actually besides my project, I have another dream, which was that I was actually very alone in my caregiving journey. So my project, my capstone project, when I delivered it, for the folks who attended it, I did it back in July this year. And guess what? Until today, this group and we are all still connecting on a daily basis after I have delivered the program. And to be honest, this group has become a resource of what I call ongoing community healing, because we continue to support each other. So this is like how ACT has really created that ripple effect. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Thank you. That's so important. And because we only have 6 minutes, I'm just going to keep on going with the questions. Next, we have Mary. Your second question is, how did the process of being part of a supportive capstone team where you could safely share and experiment with new ideas help and empower you to develop your capstone project?
Yeah, I think I touched on that quite a bit when I answered my first question, but what I will say is that, just because of the trajectory of my life and experiences that I had, I turned out to be not a very trusting person, and wasn't able to be very vulnerable, to be honest. And so my team really helped me to trust again, and not only trust other people, but trust myself, trust my intuition, and know that the universe is supporting me, which was not how I came into this whole thing. Like I said, I felt very intimidated, inferior, and there was not anybody that I had run across that made me feel that way at all. I always felt supported, and I was able to deliver a capstone project, which was a reflection really of my team's love for me and support of me. So it was like full circle is what I'll say.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's like being held with this foundation of compassion throughout the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mary. And then Abhishek, back to you with your second question. How were you personally and or professionally transformed by delivering your capstone project or participating in the ACT program? And right before you answer, if anyone in the audience has questions, you can use the raise hand button so I can get to you after Abhishek's answer, or you can post any questions in the chat and I can name them out to the panelists.
So I would say personal transformation for me came in small ways, a really important small way. I'm not a jackass to myself anymore. So, or I'm less of a jackass to myself, let's put it that, let's be honest. So, and that makes a huge difference. It's simple, small, but it's a little easier now, thanks to the community, of course.
I love that answer. I think what you learn in ACT is compassion for a loved one or someone close to you is probably the easiest form of compassion to do. And one of the hardest forms of compassion is actually self-compassion. But through the supportive community of people giving you feedback and reflecting things back to you about yourself, you start to learn that it's possible to feel that way, to treat yourself as a friend. And that's just really helpful in a process where you're developing a capstone project, which can be really intimidating and challenging. But if you can remind yourself that every other person in the program is feeling the same way as you, they're all being challenged, they're all going through the same thing, it makes it a lot.
Precisely. You said it far better than I could have, Kristine. Thank you.
Oh, you inspired me. Thank you, Abhishek. And thank you to all the other panelists. And if anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand or post in the chat. And if not, any of the panelists are also welcome to chime back in and share anything else that stood out to you about ACT or your experience in ACT as well. And I also just want to welcome anyone to share their websites, their projects, email addresses, or anything like that in the chat if you would like to stay in touch with each other. And I think I did see a question earlier on about scholarship or payment options. Monica and Neelama will answer some questions back in the main room, so we'll save that for then. But I see a question by Doreen, so I'm going to ask you to unmute. Oh, you're good. Great. Go for it.
Thanks, Kristine. I don't know exactly how to phrase the question, but I think what's going through my head right now is sort of thinking through going through an 11-month program along with full-time work. Obviously, many people do this in this program or other graduate programs. So just any thoughts that you might have about balancing that and the time commitment for the program in order to get out of it what, of course, you would want to get out of it. Any insights about that or tips or just sharing your own experiences in juggling that for those that did?
That's a great question. If there are any panelists that took the course with full-time work, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. So I have a full-time job, and I also, like I mentioned, work with a lot of people outside of my full-time job, and I'm active in my district as well. And so I'm very, very busy. And I thought, there's no way I can do this. I'm too busy. I don't know what, the universe has in store for me, but, I kept saying, I can't do it. I can't. And the truth is that it became something I wanted to prioritize because I was getting so much out of it. I was learning, and as I was learning, I was growing at the same time. And I really felt like pulled to want to do it, even though it was taking up my time, but it was like the inner therapy that I really needed. And like I said, I didn't even know I needed it. So it was definitely time well spent. So I guess to say, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I'd have the time, and I absolutely found the time.
Welcome back, everyone. I was literally here just trying to catch my breath because, I get to hear often and regularly about people's capstone projects in ACT, particularly at this time of year as the program is completing. We're in our last, our last one-on-one celebrations for capstone project completion before we move to graduation in 2 weeks. But oh my gosh, I literally had my breath taken away by hearing from the panelists in my breakout room, and I'm sure that's true in the other 2 rooms. And we also had guest panelists too, participants in ACT that were in the room that got to share about their experience too. So I'm just taking a moment here to just savor and catch my breath from having an experience of awe at all that is arising here in the ACT program. So perhaps you've caught your breath now too. The next thing I'd like to invite you to consider is just something we call a waterfall chat. You might be familiar with it. It's just to take a moment and reflect on, something that stood out to you about what you heard or experienced or learned while you were in the breakout room, something that you appreciate, and put a word or 2 or phrase in chat as something that you appreciate, something that you learned or heard or experienced when you were in the breakout room. So I invite everybody to engage in that waterfall chat if you'd like to, and we'll turn our attention to chat just to see what arises in there first. Oh, belonging, acceptance. Oh, this is going to go quickly. A sense of belonging and support. Happiness is externally generated, joy is internally generated. So wisdom arising, the ripple effects of compassion, boundless vulnerability. Cyndi shared that she can now sit in spaces she could not before. It's inspiring. Starting with a little piece, we're all experiencing similar things. Small gestures have big impact. Yes, do rather than waiting to be perfect, and grow as you go. Oh my, that is for sure a foundation of ACT. Collaboration. Panelists mentioned how their capstone projects not only served others, but themselves. We had that in our arise in our room too, and I'm sure it did in the other one. Your global map of compassion and support. Passion grows and is infectious. Follow your intuition. Yep, fly the plane while building it, and self-compassion. N of one. Yep, N of one, the one to many. So coming to terms with your organic expression and being vulnerable. That connects me back to with what Dr. Doty was saying too, about each one of us and our expressions of compassion and how being compassionate with ourselves will then start to radiate out into the world too. Spread the seeds of compassion. So thank you so very much for sharing some of the glimpses and insights that you were taking away from the breakout rooms. And I also want to give a few minutes to anyone that would like to share how they were moved by what they experienced in the breakout rooms here too, and share it with the large group, actually give voice to it. And I know that it can be a little maybe surprising to be invited to share in the large group, but rest assured what's shared not only is of benefit to you, but when we share in these particular kinds of ways, it actually becomes beneficial to other people in this circle as well. And there's even evidence that suggests that it starts to amplify our experiences of compassion when we come together as a group in this way too. So I'm curious who might be willing to share a little bit about their experience and what they appreciated about their experience with the panelists in one of their breakout rooms. You could go ahead and raise your virtual hand. That would be really helpful to share something that stood out to you that was meaningful about being in those breakout rooms. Oh, Pablo, I see your hand. Well done. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I was really moved, mostly because what I knew from even working from my own capstone idea was mostly focused in knowledge.
Oh.
And I found and it was moving that these people were sincerely transformed by compassion, and well, that's something that I'm really dream of. I perhaps sometimes you have too much in your head, and I like to be able to express like them with honesty and sincerely. I'm grateful. So thank you.
Thank you so very much for sharing that. It takes quite a bit of compassion actually to arrive in this group and share that. Sounds like you value and were familiar with knowledge as you were thinking about your capstone project, and yet now are also inspired and would like to be able to express and perhaps embody compassion in the way that you were experiencing in your breakout room with the panelists. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that inspiration and that giving us a glimpse of the journey that you'll be on in this next little while. Monica, welcome.
Hi, how you going? I guess one of the things that came up in ours that I spoke to or asked a question about related to vulnerability. So I thought I better, challenge that, I guess, inherent blockage that I have to be vulnerable and say something. I was, I guess, really moved by the willingness of people that we don't know, sharing their experiences and knowledge, and just genuinely, time is our most precious resource. So, giving up your time to connect with people all around the world is incredibly moving, and I'm so grateful, particularly with everything that we're seeing at the moment. It's really heartwarming to hear from you all. And I think, again, I think I mentioned it, it's recalibrated where I am internally and in my mind about where my focus is, and it has reaffirmed that I am on the right path. And yeah, so very, very grateful to all of you, and obviously everybody else who's attending and is interested like me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Monica. And you're right. This is a place where we can come not only with our joy and our inspiration, but we can also come with the sorrows that may be ours, or maybe it's the sorrows of the world that we're bearing on our shoulders right now, and be received actually, however we're showing up, with compassion, right? Like that we may not have that in this moment, maybe for ourselves, but somebody here in this circle will be able to hold us and hold each other and hold this vast experience of humanity with compassion. So you're exactly right. This is a place where you can regularly and often come to reconnect with compassion and to be held with compassion too. So really well said. Thank you. Barbara.
Hi, thank you so much. I think what really just went right into my heart was one of our panelists was speaking about how when he came into the program that he felt like he needed all this support, almost like an unbelievable amount of support, and how could I ever get that? And yet by the end of the program, because of the openness and the compassion and being seen and being heard, that he realized he was loved, and that all he really needed was the love, and then all the other things that he thought he needed were he was already resourced in. So it's just like, it's not, really, to be seen and to be heard and to be witnessed and completely and totally accepted for our authentic selves, to be loved ultimately, I think is all humanity is looking for right now. So thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. You weren't in the room that I was facilitating, and yet the same theme emerged in ours too. The power of being seen and heard and seeing and hearing, and how fundamentally the transformative that is, in a way then that starts to inform everything else that's going on. That came up in our room too. So thank you so very much. Well said, Barbara. Kristine.
I just got really nervous. My heart just started pounding. I was really touched by Ian speaking in our room, and this visual of him handing trash, and you rephrasing it by Monica. This was room 2. Someone was saying room 1 forever. Room 2 was very awesome. So where he was saying, he was sharing how he felt about himself. These gems were garbage, and that when Monica heard it and rephrased it and handed it back to him, she shared it as something very beautiful. That so I think that touched me, and I'm very sensitive, like Dr. Doty. So I'm going to try and hold it together. I would love to learn to do that, not just for myself, but with my children, with my colleagues, and help others kind of reshape their view of themselves and find the gems that we all have. So I loved that. So thank you, Ian.
Yeah, it really was a beautiful offering that Ian shared. And Kristine, it's one of the things that we practice often and regularly in ACT, right? Is how to receive and then how to give. We do it in ways that are informal, and yet we also do it in ways that are actually formal, and we invite people to engage in particular kinds of practices and experiments and explorations as well. So thank you for sharing that moved you. David.
Yeah, I learned a lot through the breakout group. Excuse me for swearing a little bit, but I assumed everyone going in the program had their shit together and knew exactly what they wanted to do. And they said, I want the tools and I'm going to do A, B, C. They were very vulnerable in sharing that it was design thinking where, you fail quickly, you adjust, learn, pivot, and they came to wonderful programs and ways to share it. And that was inspiring to me. And
Yeah.
so I learned a lot through that.
Yeah, David, you know what? I'm going to use the cuss word. Well, I'll spell the cuss word. Everyone does have their HIT together. We just have to go through this process together to actually come to that realization, right? So it really, time and time again, the project and the brilliance is there actually as nuggets and gems in the very beginning. And then we go through a process and then it starts to emerge over time. So even in this very moment, you have your HIT together as well, SHIT together as well. And we have to go through this human process all together to have that be revealed and shared. Bill.
Thank you. I was really struck by the emphasis that many people put on taking actions of various kind. I realize that's structured into the program.
Yeah.
Compared to CCT, this, which I know the programs are very different in scope and so forth, but I wasn't expecting until I joined this session tonight the emphasis on taking action as part of the learning compassion. I think, well, I'm a guy who's often in his head, so I really, I was really appreciative of the emphasis on getting out of the head and into the heart and into taking steps.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things that distinguishes this program. I'm actually, one of the founders of the other program that you mentioned in that protocol. And what we really needed to do differently, though, is to move and support people into taking action. The intention to be compassionate is just not enough anymore, right? It's just not enough. We have to move in skillful ways, efficiently and effectively as we can towards taking compassionate and action in the world. And I just feel so very fortunate with my colleagues, Robert and Neelama, that we three came together and now through multiple rounds of this have refined a practice and a process and have a community that really supports each of us moving forward in ways that work for us to take compassionate action in the world. So Bill, thank you. We've done our job because you realize this is about taking compassionate action. And my guess is you're an action kind of person. So this perhaps will be a great fit for you too. Jose, you get the last word here.
Oh my, no pressure.
Just a little.
So I think given the state of the world, many people can get in this kind of paralysis of hopelessness of not knowing what to do. And something that was shared in our group was, and I wrote this down, what is your little piece you can do today? And I thought I wrote that question down because I'm going to start with that question every day. So I love that in our time together, I extracted something or I was able to pull something that I'm going to start implementing tomorrow. Because what a beautiful thing. What is your little piece? Because like they mentioned on the call, so many of us want to do so many things, and our heart and the scope of the impact we want to have on the world is this big. And it's important to remember to start with your little piece, and that your little piece is enough, and that it's plenty. And so that's what I'm taking with me starting tomorrow. And in all of the work that I do with organizations, I'm going to start asking that question to people or propositioning that. So thank you.
Well done, well done, well done. Thank you so very much for ending on that note, Jose. Really, that what is your little piece, and that you're starting to implement that tomorrow and with the organizations that you're leading and that you're part of. Well said. So thank you so very much, everyone, for giving us a glimpse into what was meaningful or useful, something that you heard or that you learned in those breakout rooms. Thank you so very much to all of our panelists for sharing their wisdom and their expertise and their vulnerability. And I'll just add, their grace as they're going through this journey of being ambassadors of compassion. I'm just going to take one moment here. I know that there are many of you that are here that are interested in registering for ACT 2024. And the registration is still open for our program next year. It's open through December. And I think we've answered many of the commonly asked questions about it. You know, one of the commonly asked questions people want to know, is it a good fit for me? And what you can tell is ACT is about integrating personal interests with taking action out into the world, compassionate action. People are applying compassion within their own lives and sharing it with others. You know, it didn't come up so much tonight, but sometimes people are tired of going it alone and they want to be with other people who are committed to something like compassion and acting from the roots of compassion. So if those are the things that you're wondering about, is this a good fit for you? Those are some of the responses to that question. You know, the question about the project comes up, that came up a couple of times here, and I don't have an idea. It's okay. You know, we've got a proven process that moves people through developing and delivering a capstone project. And gosh, this question comes up, is my project good enough? And I would really like you to remember that there is no hierarchy when it comes to applying compassion. Some projects are personal and intimate. Some projects are larger. Some projects have a complex scope. Some projects have a simplistic scope. And each person and each project, every person and every project in ACT is worthy, it's deserving, it's valued and celebrated. And then lastly, you know, maybe it came up in your breakout rooms, but the ACT program does open remarkable doors and opportunities. Neelama named that when she shared her overview. And we can't guarantee specific outcomes as a result of receiving a certificate of completion from Stanford University as a CCARE Ambassador of Compassion. But what we've experienced is that certificate combined with your capstone projects leads to all kinds of opportunities for participants: speaking engagements, new programs, career transitions, advancement within their own companies. And so that's one of the things that you may consider as you're also thinking about registering for ACT. So thank you so very much for joining us tonight. And ACT is a place where the personal and the professional meet. Compassion gets applied all over the world, and you'll find a community of people just like you that are working together to make the world a better place. I so hope to get to see you in ACT 2024. Neelama, I'm going to hand this off to you to close us out for today.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you to everyone that shared and wrote into the chat. I'm overflowing hearing and reading your comments and feeling how the event inspired you. We only have 2 more minutes, and so I want to offer us a little final practice to close. It's something we do in all of our sessions when we come together as a community. So if you would join me for a moment in taking a breath into your own heart, and if you are comfortable closing your eyes a moment, you could close your eyes or just direct your gaze down at your own heart center. Symbolically, that's the center of compassion in us as human beings. And sometimes when we're overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the world, like Jose said, we can only do one little thing in any given moment. What I would like to invite us to do together as one little act in this given moment is just to take all that you received here tonight, whatever gems of goodness or insight or inspiration, or maybe even a moment of compassion. I'd love us to together as a community of compassion send that energy somewhere in the world, somewhere you know where there is suffering, Maybe we can't do anything right in this moment to alleviate that suffering, but we can send the energy of our own heart's kindness, our own heart's compassion to those places, to those people. And when we do this together as a collective community, it has even more healing benefit and power. So just a moment more, see all that energy we generated together here tonight going out into the world, wrapping up those places and people with the giant embrace of compassion. Taking one last breath, and thank you again, everyone, for joining this session tonight, for your own commitment to compassion, for your own good hearts. And I hope we get to see you at a future ACT program, ACT 2024, as Monica said, and or a future ACT event. If you have a question about ACT 2024, we'll hang on for about 15 minutes or so. Otherwise, bidding you all farewell. You can come off mute and say goodbye to each other until we meet again. Take good care, everyone.
Take good care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank
everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, program.
Really loved it. Bye.
Bye, friends. Take good care. See you
Bye.
next time.
See you next